All right, and here we go in three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me this week is Peyton Davila of Two Peas on a Pod. Peyton, welcome in, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Simon. I am very happy, just like many of us. Like we have what 9 days till football,
Yeah, baby.
8 days, whatever it is. Um, very excited. I mean, I am also a college fan, so like that's not what we're talking about on this episode. We're talking about NFL football. So for our purposes, it's like 8 days away, which very excited about. By the time people will be listening, it'll be like exactly a week, so even better. But yeah, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk about what we think is going to happen this upcoming season in every facet.
Yeah, if you are watching on YouTube, thank you all for being here. Please like the video, comment with your picks for what we're doing tonight. Please share, subscribe to the channel. Check out Peyton on Two Peas. Peyton on that show with his brother Parker, me over here on Simon and Friends. We've been macro, I would say, previewing the NFL season so far. Peyton, I think, has gotten starting to get in a little more micro with some of his bets and stuff like that in the recent weeks, going division by division. Over here, if you've been watching or listening, you've seen our position group draft, our team wins draft. So some fun things, some big picture level. It's time to put our money where the mouth is, though, Peyton, and give our official picks for the 2025 season. We are handing out our awards for the year. You are our awards guy. This is our first award show on YouTube. So if you're watching, thank you for that. It's our first award show on video. We've done segments over on the Box Score Network YouTube channel. So check that out if you haven't already. But full episode award show throughout the whole season. If you haven't watched or heard any of these before, Peyton and I hand out awards for just general trends and interesting topics that we want to talk about during the season. But we will hit throughout the year, preseason, midseason, end of season. We will hit these big awards and just give you guys our takes and what we think. And it's a good way to give our official predictions for how the year is going to go. So, Peyton, we start right off at the top. We don't tease nothing. We're just going to get right into it. Hit us with your MVP.
Well, unlike our awards the rest of the year, these ones don't have goofy names that we just randomly decided to assign to them based on how we're feeling that day. But for my MVP this year, if you listen to our betting show by chance, I did some of these will align with that. Some of them won't. This one does. It's Joe Burrow for me. Joe Burrow is my MVP for the 25 NFL season. And looking back at last year, I mean, he led the league in passing, led the league in touchdowns. There is not enough that's changed about the Cincinnati Bengals' identity as a team and their DNA for me to think that's probably not going to be the case again. At least there being a good likelihood that that's the case again. Um, Last year, he ended up with it was 4,918 yards, 43 touchdowns, and T. Higgins missed 5 games. My argument for this is that if T. Higgins just doesn't miss 5 games, let's say he misses 2 games, right? It's a significant weapon he's going to have back, making it significantly easier to achieve certain statistical thresholds, if I can get the words out of my mouth. Um, I think there is a real possibility that Joe Burrow could have a 5,000-yard passing season, which we have not seen many of in general. But I also think that he could eclipse 40-plus touchdowns pretty easily. And then having less than 15 interceptions seems pretty doable. He has not been as prone to being turnover heavy over the last couple of seasons, even at the high passing rate that he has been. And even though he's throwing a ton of passes, he's still above like this. I believe last year he had like 70% completion rate, something around there. And
Yep.
usually the threshold like for MVP candidates is like 65% or above, typically if you're a quarterback. And with all those different thresholds that I think he can reach 3 times in the last 6 seasons that has been done. 2 of the 3 times the player won MVP, and I would very much argue that the time that it did happen when they didn't win MVP, they should have, because both the MVP wins were Patrick Mahomes' 2018,
hmm
2022, and the one
hmm
where it didn't happen was 2021 Brady, where Rodgers won, and I think a lot of people had almost like instant regret after the fact, considering what we in retrospect realize about Brady doing what he did at the age that he was. So, with that said, I think that the likelihood of him reaching those thresholds, and because of what I think the Bengals are as a team this year, um, they did figure out the Trey Hendrickson deal for at least this year, so
hmm
Hendrickson will be back on the team. Um, the defense in theory is better, even if it's not average. It's better than it was last year in theory. I mean, it granted, we still have to see it in action. And
Hmm.
even if it's not better, the Bengals had terrible luck in one score games in the first place, like historically bad for the franchise luck. To the point where it makes me think that there is a good likelihood of a lot of those results being flip flopped or at least evening out to kind of like the middle of the bell curve in that regard. To the point where there's a likelihood this team is going to be a playoff team. They're currently in Vegas favored to make the playoffs, and I think that if they are a playoff team and Joe Burrow reaches those thresholds, I think there's a good case for him to be MVP at that point.
How many wins? I'm gonna make you spoil kind of your division winner a little bit, maybe. Maybe you can play this coy enough. By the way, that 2021 Rodgers MVP, we talked a lot about in our episode, one of our episodes this summer, like what makes an MVP, what is the MVP award? So, because that was a pretty spicy voting year for sure. The MVP exclusively, I'm going to say exclusively, goes to the quarterback for the team that wins 12 or 11 plus games, is at least first or second in the conference, and wins their division. That has been the case going back through the 2013 MVP award with Peyton Manning. 2012, Adrian Peterson, the last time it was a non quarterback, was the last time that wasn't the case. The Vikings that year finished with 10 wins. They were a wild card team. They were in fact the sixth seed team in the playoffs that year, the last place team in the playoffs. And then you go back through, and it's not until 2008 did a quarterback win the award, not winning their division and not being first or second in the conference. That was Peyton Manning again, 2008 with the Colts. They still won 12 games, but I forget if it was the Texans. I think maybe the Texans that year. Oh wait, I might be making myself look a fool. Had
That
had
would make
13
sense.
wins.
Yeah.
The another AFC South team had 13 wins that year, and the Colts were the fifth place seed overall. So they still had 12 wins. So what are you? We'll get back to the defense in a minute as we kind of break down what you think for the team. But what is your like? What do you think this team could be? This team that won what was 8 games last year, like really hasn't hit double digit wins since they, or really a high number of wins since they went to the Super Bowl in 2021. High expectations for the Bengals this season for you?
I do relatively have high expectations. I am picking this knowing it's kind of against the grain, and historically there have not been many instances where a non-division winning quarterback has won the MVP. But I think there is a case to be made that I don't know how, and maybe I love Lamar Jackson. Don't get me wrong, but like it's very rare to see a guy who has had two MVP back-to-back worthy seasons, um, with as much of a responsibility he's carrying on that offense, kind of replicate what he's done the past 2 years for a third year in a row.
Hmm.
Um, Granted, you'll find out how much I like the Ravens as a team later. But when it comes to Lamar, who's currently, I believe, the MVP favorite, I'm choosing Joe Burrow, given that he's going to reach like a career high in possibly all three categories of the trio of QB stats that everybody looks at. And likely, I would say that at least 10 wins, but I also feel comfortable saying that they're going to be an 11-win team that probably falls a game, maybe too short of the Ravens for the division title. But it would almost be I feel very strongly about the Bengals being like last year's oh gosh, what if I'm trying to remember, like last year's Vikings almost,
Right.
where
Hmm.
they very clearly would be like the 2 or 3 seed in their conference, but maybe not 2 seed, like the 3 seed in the conference, but because of
Hmm.
the structure of the playoffs, like they're gonna end up a wild card team. So
Okay. So essentially, it'd be looking at the 2024 Bengal season because don't forget, people thought we're making Burrow MVP cases down the stretch end of the season, even while
right,
the Bengals were just fighting to be in the playoff bubble and end up finishing with a 9-8 record. So if you bump that up, like you said, like if Higgins is healthy all season, let's not even talk about the defense right now because I do disagree on where they're going to be at this year. let's just say Higgins is healthy for those three extra games, and they win two of them. And this is an 11-win team that's like securely in the playoffs, and it's like they're gonna be the 5 seed, and they're like by far the best wild card team, right? And they're a top five offense, and they are competing with Baltimore for the division, and they fall just short. That is in line with that Peyton Manning season, that '08 Manning season. But '08 was the last time it happened. But listen, I mean, like records are meant to be broken. I'm sure if we went
Yeah.
from '08 to however long, now there's a lot of running back seasons in between there. But I'm sure it'd be, another decently long chunk since then. Um, this is fun though. Like the league is fun when Burrow and the Bengals are hot. So I definitely see where you're at there. All right, talk to me about this defense. So let's take this a little bit. You got me going here. Take this to the defense. What makes you feel like this can at least be like even to a mediocre level, just
I don't.
enough to skate by?
I wouldn't even say it has to be mediocre for them to be better. I think they were like a bottom three defense definitively last season,
Yeah.
and if they're merely floating in the somewhere between, let's just call it 24th to like 20th,
hmm
that's still an improvement. Like
hmm
it
Yeah,
does
that's
it
huge.
just
It's a
it's for
huge difference being bad. Like if you look statistically at anything, if you like traditional stats, if you like the
yeah,
advanced metrics, the bottom two teams in defense are so much worse
yes,
compared to the bottom 30 to 25 defenses. It's a chasm. It's a huge break between what those are like. And a
right.
lot of it's luck. A lot of it is luck. So it's not necessarily you think the roster is much better. It's just like what are the chances they're quite that bad again?
There's, and I mean they, from what I remember last year, like they had essentially no linebacking core outside of like Logan Wilson, right?
Right, because Jermaine Pratt
Was
was
kind of like on and off the
done.
field
He
a little
like
bit.
wanted
Yeah,
he wanted to not be there even last
yeah,
year. And he as one of those old school downhill thumpers, like he just has lost a step. Last year was also the season where Dax Hill is playing corner,
yeah.
outside corner for like the first time, and was actually doing okay. And then he was it ACL? It was a knee injury. I think it was ACL. But
Yeah,
it
I
was
think you're
like
right.
if they
Yeah,
were at that point with their outside corner spot, that
right.
he was like their number one guy.
That you're
Now he's
already in a
supposed to be
yeah,
right, exactly. Now he's supposed to be in the nickel with DJ Turner and Cam Taylor Britt on the outside.
right.
Um,
Jordan Battle's
and
still at safety, and I
Jordan
mean
Battle,
it's
Geno Stone are there.
yeah,
It's they took a few linebackers in the draft, but the only one
they
I'm
did.
seeing on our did a couple. They might have sent a couple to the practice. Oh no, there's
Demetrius,
Barrett Carter.
yeah, I was gonna say
Demetrius
Demetrius
Knight
Knight
looks like he's
and
going to start.
yeah, Barrett Carter, I believe is. I don't know that he's going to be starting right away, but I like him a lot more than kind of like the draft clearly liked him, and I just think that maybe talent will win out at that point.
Is Knight
In
is Knight a thumper?
say it again. No,
Isn't isn't
Knight is more of like athletic freak.
Yeah, okay.
Convert. I want to say I don't know if he converted, but um, definitely not as polished as like Carter is as far as just general linebacker technique, but
Okay.
a lot of upside.
All right. All
The
right.
biggest thing is like I just that I like historically speaking, we very rarely see a defense be that bad back to back years, even with like even after investing on that side of the ball, even if it
Yeah.
is just like a couple of guys on the at linebacker, or you know, even and a big difference might be even be just defensive coordinator changing with Lou Anarumo out,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and just a scheme change that can also
Yes.
improve, even if it is marginally improve a defense from being historically bad to just pretty bad, which is
Yep.
it's two very different things. But
It does make a huge difference.
and even though like what the good thing about that is, here's my fantasy brain coming out, is that because the defense will just be plain bad instead of historically, or like not historically bad, just extremely bad. It's bad enough to where Joe Burrow is still going to have to pass the ball a lot to win
Yep.
games.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be better enough to where they're at the end of some of these games that they lost last year, they might be able to get a stop maybe in one or two of the games, and it flips it completely. So that's my main argument for this. I
Okay.
know that we've gone, I think, pretty long on Joe Burrow. I would really like to hear who you have
This
as
is
your
literally
MVP
the
pick.
MVP. I think we could talk
It
about
is
this,
pretty important,
and
right?
I've like the historical trend, especially because mine's going to be boring. The historical trend is also what really got me going. Like I made sure to go through and find the exact time that it wasn't a quarterback with 12 or 13 wins. But you're thinking, I wanted to hear what exactly your case. It's some of that one score win loss regression. It's defense is maybe marginally better. It's T Higgins maybe a little more healthy. They scrape a couple more wins out. It looks a little bit more competitive. They're firmly in the playoffs. Because again, people even when they weren't in the playoffs and the defense was horrible and they were losing all these one score games, people were still saying, "Look at Joe Burrow, he should win MVP." If we didn't, I want it'd be funny the psychology of the MVP award. If we didn't have that moment, because narrative is a big part of this, we've talked about this in the past. If we didn't have that, where it was like Burrow is playing at an MVP level, but the rest of his team is not catching up, they're letting him down. If now he gets a little bit of retribution from that, he gets a couple more wins. That's where that like narrative side comes out. People being like, he stuck this out, he did this back to back years, and it's paying off for him, and they make that vote. I think you laid out the case well. I see it. I obviously don't hope for it as a
As a
Steeler fan right
right.
here, but you know, it's still fun. It's still fun. Joe Burrow is unfortunately really cool. When I was getting the pictures for these graphics, I did intentionally try to look for one of the stupider pictures of
When
Joe
he
Burrow
wasn't
because I'm
that he didn't just look like the coolest guy in the league.
yeah, because I was like, man, dang, it was really unfortunate. I tried really hard. I'll be honest. All right, here's my MVP. And Peyton actually is at a disadvantage because he didn't get to know my picks before this, and he can't see these graphics as we go. So I'll just say it. It's Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
I I will say some of these awards, it feels like we are back in 2022, which is really funny. But there's been a lot of griping about the Kansas City Chiefs offense the last several seasons, and it's not explosive anymore. The run game isn't consistent. Patrick Mahomes is a Ferrari playing like a station wagon. And on top of that, there's the Taylor Swift narrative, which, man, when I has aged well, me writing that a week ago, and you know, the announcement since then. The Mahomes baiting defenders, the refs cheating for the Chiefs narrative, all this stuff is working against the Chiefs right now in the eye of public perception. Like nobody is pro Chief really anymore. Well, I hate to tell everyone this, but the Chiefs are coming back with a vengeance this season. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes were satisfied with the decreasing passing yards, touchdown passes, air yards per pass attempt, adjusted net yards per pass attempt, and time to throw rate when the result at the end of the year was still winning a Super Bowl. They're like, cool, we're winning ugly, but we're winning. That's all we care about. But after getting their teeth absolutely kicked in the Super Bowl last season, those days are behind them. The first thing to fix was this offensive line. So out goes Joe Tooney, which sucks. He's still a top three left guard in the NFL. But when you have the league's best center and what I think is a top five right guard on the other side who needed to be paid, it's the cost of doing business. The real issue has been at tackle. Last year, Tooney was the third player to take snaps on Mahomes' blind side, and his limitations were made clear the deeper into the season they got. Now they have a bona fide first round player in Josh Simmons at left tackle and a skilled veteran in Jalen Moore ready to bolster a group at a number of spots. Whether he supplants Juwan Taylor at some point, he needs to back up Simmons at some point, he needs to go in and play guard for somebody. Um, Mahomes took a career high in sacks last year, despite a career low in time to throw. That will not happen again in 2025. Next at receiver, there's far more juice than what started the year last year. Last year's starters were Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Rashee Rice. None of those players averaged an average depth of target in the double digits in 2024. Once Rashee Rice went down and was replaced by Justin Watson, who was their, downfield guy, but as a low volume and really low success rate option. Hollywood Brown was brought in last year to provide juice, but he got hurt in preseason, and he only played a handful of games at the end of the year and wasn't really involved. But his career ADOT is 11.5 yards. So with Brown and Worthy providing some speed and downfield ability, Worthy's ADOT was just over 9, so you think like maybe that could get a little bit higher as this year goes. Plus a combination of Rice when he comes off from suspension, by the way, which did come down today. Juju Smith-Schuster, and even rookie Jalen Royals when he kind of gets healthy and going at some point, operating in the short spaces, and obviously Travis Kelce. Casey will have options to push the ball, right? Royals is in that mold of Rashee Rice, which is like that stocky body, catch short and get yak. So I wonder how much of like the suspension was kind of playing into that pick, right? Like now he's hurt right now. I didn't even check to with all these roster machinations if he's like starting on IR or they did anything funky with him. But if he's there and on the field, he can do a little bit of that stuff for Rice at some point. But if for 6 weeks Juju is their starting slot, just like catching the easy things over the middle, while Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy are like providing some speed on the outside, that's still way more downfield ability, way more explosive ability than what the Chiefs have had the last couple of years. And then I think mentally, Casey is going to want to flip the switch and get after it on offense. And this time, I think they have the personnel to match that. It feels like a good time for Mahomes to remind everybody that he's not just a winner in the playoffs, but a guy who can put up big numbers. I think Casey gets back to a top five offense in every major category this year, and they're right back in the thick of things. Because let's not forget, man, even in these quote unquote down years, they've still been top 10 in like offensive efficiency and every metric you want. So I think this is the year they just have that juice and that mindset of we just need to go after it. It's like 99% chance it's Kelsey's last year. I don't think they're holding anything back. So I think Mahomes goes on a rampage this year as the best player in the NFL.
Now, I do like the argument because I very much do think that the Chiefs are going to get back to so-called Chiefs of old, even though it was what 2 years ago since we've
Exactly. Yeah.
seen like it feels like it's been forever, but it hasn't really. My only counter is because I agree a lot with like the offensive line improvements are like the biggest deal for me. It's just that like Patrick Mahomes, it's very much like the argument of insert name of X, the old cliche of insert X name of elite quarterback with time is the best quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
Whether it be Brady, Brady with time or Rodgers with time. It's all about
Hmm.
time in the pocket that they have to just pick you apart. And if you have more, even if it's 2/10 of a second or 3/10 of a second, it's enough
Yeah.
time to where you are going to get more explosive plays just by design, and that's just that's how it goes. Um, so with the tackle improvements, considering that you and I and the majority of everybody seems to be in on this Josh Simmons idea, especially considering that before the draft he was seen as a top 10 pick when healthy, and it seems like he
Hmm.
is. So barring his health, and I mean like Jalen Moore's a fine, kind of like breaking case of emergency if he
I
does
like
get
Jalen
hurt.
Moore. Hmm.
Um, it's going to be better than it has been, and really today's news with the Rashee Rice suspension, we kind of knew it was coming. Um, I think my only case would be, and I will say it's better for, honestly, better for Mahomes that the suspension is occurring at the beginning of the season rather than the later part of the season, just because of how narratives go with the MVP. Like, I'd
Right.
rather have
Hmm.
my guys sit out the first 6 weeks whenever everybody kind of forgets what happens in September and October, and we're playing our best football in,
Yep.
December going into January, and that's when people are going to be voting for the MVP anyways. Which we did. We had that whole discussion about that bias, how that occurs very often in the MVP race. I think that having, like you said, Royals, because I was going to say that same thing where like they almost are similar in
Hmm.
the way because Kelsey and Rice very much operate in that like middle of the field area, like short area targets, and then you know not so much nowadays for Kelsey, but like do whatever work they can after the catch.
Right.
Royals very much fits that mold, like you said, and I did look it up. Right, he did avoid IR, from what I can tell, and pup. Like
Yep. Yep.
so that's actually a really big deal. So
Yeah.
he while Rice is out, it seems like maybe minus week one that Royals will be able to slot in and fill in the Rasheed Rice role.
Hmm.
I would say a little commendably as somebody who liked Jalen Royals coming out of
Yeah.
Utah State. Um, I don't expect him to have the same production, but just the ability to provide that as a threat in the passing game, I think will be enough for Mahomes to establish what the Chiefs want to do offensively early on, and then whenever Rashi Rice comes back, supposedly not supposedly, but like presumably completely healed from the ACL last year and
Hmm.
whatever other ligaments Patrick Mahomes tore. Um, well past like whatever's no more pending suspensions, like can focus on helping the team win a championship obviously, but having that additional weapon come in and not being able to miss a beat or have like a disjointed season, I
Yep.
think will be a really big deal for the offense as a whole, just kind of like being able to pick up and remain in stride as opposed to having this like herky jerky type of Okay, well,
Yeah.
we're going to have our
Hmm.
guy for a month. Okay, he's going to be gone for the next 2 months of the season. Okay, well, then we have him back, so we're going to go back to playing the way we did before. It just it creates so much more fluidity with how this Chiefs season is going to go offensively. So I definitely see the case. I can't really argue with it. Like, I think most sane people are like, there's four guys who can win the MVP this year. And it's like the two guys we named and the two guys who were in the race last year. So I as somebody who agrees with the idea that the Chiefs offensively are going to be more pass happy, um, at least I will say, at least in between the 20s. I do kind of have a question about the touchdowns because I do think that
Hmm.
like I'm very much a proponent of Isaiah Pacheco was so hurt last year that they almost just couldn't use him. And if he's completely healthy, we saw what
True.
Isaiah Pacheco is in the red
Oh
zone.
yeah.
So that might be like the only counter argument is maybe the touchdown numbers aren't that high.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if it comes down to, hey, there's another quarterback like Joe Burrow or Lamar, Josh Allen, whoever, and it's like, yeah, but the touchdown numbers weren't high enough. Like that might just be the one thing that
Yeah.
causes people to lean one direction or the other. That's the only
Yeah.
counter argument I have for Mahomes.
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about like where those guys thrive when they get in the red zone as pass catchers.
Yeah.
Now listen, Andy Reid's gonna. Oh gosh, not only is it giving Patrick Mahomes time, but giving Andy Reid time to work with again as a play designer, I think is gonna be huge. He was starting to get a little bit of that like fraud watch stuff last year, and it's because there's there's no tackles to block. Um, but that is a really good point. I do think Isaiah Pacheco, both from a fantasy and also just like a on Sunday on the grass kind of football standpoint, we're forgetting that he like broke his leg and was
Yeah.
playing like off of that during last season. Very last note on the Chiefs. Kingsley Suamataia is going to be the starting left guard, I think. I was predicting
Oh,
all offseason
interesting.
Jalen Moore would have taken that job, but I think they were more trying to get Moore to maybe beat out Jawan Taylor and push at tackle. Um, but it seems like that's not the case. So Moore's coming off the bench. But I will say the only good things I've seen from Kingsley from his last year in college watching to last year with Kansas City was last year with Kansas City when they would get him out on the move from the left side and just let him be a road grader out in space. He looks way more athletic in space than he does in the pocket, which is weird.
Hmm.
Usually those things translate pretty well. But if he's playing left guard, man, and they just send him out to pull, and he might wreck some people, and especially if it's him and Josh Simmons and they're running left out there to get like that would be fun. So I will say I think Sumate might be a pretty good guard, but certainly limited in pass protection, which is not great for Mahomes. So we'll see, but we'll see if Jalen Moore comes up. All right, let's move on here. Offensive Player of the Year, Peyton. Viewers here, thank you all so much again for being here on YouTube. Should not be surprised by this name that's on the screen now, based on everything Peyton said. But Peyton, take it away.
There. Yeah. Right there. Wherever it
There
is
you go.
there.
Yep, that's it. You picked the worst hand.
uh,
Why didn't you use your other hand?
I don't know, man. I don't
Your
think
other
these
hand
things.
right now is naturally pointing at
There.
him with
That
like
one.
no problem. That's perfect. I'm gonna
That
clip
guy right
that
there, Jamar
weird hand
Chase.
thing you
He's my
just did.
offensive player of the year.
It's pretty
This
good.
is kind of boring because it does correlate directly with like my MVP pick, and it's kind of like a lot of the argument is like see above kind of thing, you know. But
How many Chase Burrow stacks did you get in your fantasy drafts in the last week or so?
zero. So,
Oh, bummer.
well, because I didn't end up with the first pick, so you know, it's like,
Yeah, it's pretty
what
limited
can you do?
options. Yeah.
Um, I just think that I think he's probably going to win the Triple Crown, which has
Ooh,
only
when
been
was the
done
last
like
time we had back-to-back Triple Crown winners?
not. I don't. I think it. I think I
That would
looked it
take some
up, and
real
I think it
research. I
was in
can't do
the.
that
I
right
want
now.
to say it was Jerry Rice and
Yeah, I was about
Sterling
to say
Sharp was the
that
last
makes
time it
sense.
happened. And that was back when, and that's like people forget how good Sterling Sharp was because of the
Hmm.
injury stuff. But um, going back to Chase, it all boils down to if Burrow has that much like that the 5,000 yard passing season, Chase has to have like 1,800 of them at
Right.
minimum. Um, I don't know that I would say that he's going to be able. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to have the first 2,000 yard season ever. I say it's in the cards, sure. Um, I have too much respect for T Higgins to say that Chase is going to garner enough of the target share and enough of the downfield targets for him to reach that threshold because T. Higgins is so talented of a wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver too. He's a wide receiver one who just happens to be on a team where he has one of the best receivers we've seen in the modern era on his same team. So because of that, I do think that Chase's ceiling, so to speak, is limited as far as what he can do from a historical standpoint. But I see 1,800 with like 15 touchdowns as being in the cards for him, which is still like one of the better receiving seasons we've seen probably in the last 10 years. I think only, was it like I think like six other guys have had 1,800 yards in a season. And I don't know how many of them have. I probably should have researched this part, but I'm a casual, so I guess I didn't do it. Um, I would imagine that probably most of them had 15 touchdowns. Maybe a few of them had less, depending. But I don't see, and really my argument, I think the way to go for Offensive Player of the Year, I guess if you're going to pick a quarterback, maybe you can, but I don't like doing the quarterback thing because I think
Yeah,
it's,
and it really
it's,
doesn't happen anymore.
yeah, and because it did happen a lot whenever I was looking at the
Hmm.
historical occurrences of like who wins this award and like what typically happens. Um, but nowadays it's always going to go to a running back or a wide receiver, and this year I don't. I'm betting a little bit on regression from a certain somebody named Saquon Barkley because I don't see him
Yep.
having the year he had last year. It's really hard for me to imagine a running back having the kind of season that could eclipse a season
Yeah.
like a Jamar Chase. There were a couple other guys I will say that I considered for this that fell in. It boiled down to how many guys could do a close to triple crown season or like a just astronomical statistical season that is on a good offense. Um, which I don't know who you picked, so I don't want to like ruin a name. I was gonna say like I thought about this guy, but if he's your pick,
All
then
right.
I'm not gonna ruin it. I'll say it after the fact. But a lot of it did boil down to who's the receiver that I think could like have a historic season, and because I think highly of what Burrow is going to do, regardless of whether he wins MVP or not, I think that he could still do that. And even if he doesn't win MVP, I think Chase is just very much. I think he's the favorite right now, anyways, to win Offensive Player of the Year. And I think that there's a very strong case for him to end up winning the award. So
Yeah, and based on what you said about Burrow, it makes total sense. I have no pushback on Chase. He's awesome. The Bengals offense is sick when everyone's out there, so that's great. I'm just gonna give a couple notes based on some things we talked about. We've actually never had a back or since the merger haven't had a back to back Triple Crown winner. There were years where Rice and Sharp went back and forth on either winning it or one would get it and one wouldn't, or one was just shy on something. But the last person to do it, you're gonna like this as a fellow fan of the Ringer fantasy football podcast. Don Hudson
nice.
from 1942 to 1944, baby, a three-peat. Actually, no, 41, four-peat, and then he also got it in 36, 5 years before that, for the old Green Bay Packers there in the 40s. Won it several times, but no, haven't had a back-to-back winner since then. But the case you're making does make me think of Marvin Harrison Sr. because we were talking about Peyton Manning as well. And those years with the Colts were just like from 1999 to 2002. He had over 100 catches and over 1,400 yards and double-digit touchdowns in all 4 years. Like, even if Chase doesn't get like first in each category, he can still put up monster numbers in every
Right.
single one.
Right.
And then, yeah, we talked about it last year when we did this show, and it was like, yeah, a quarterback hasn't won since 2018. The Derrick Henry 2020 year felt like this is when he didn't get MVP that year, when he was probably the most deserving. We'll give him Opoy, and it felt like everybody just agreeing like, okay, if this is what's happening this year, this is what's happening in the future. Quarterbacks get MVP, non-quarterbacks are for Opoy, and we'll leave it at that. Um, and then yeah, the whole running back versus wide receiver discussion. I went back and I looked at my notes from last year, and it was like statistically, when running backs get it, it's like a 1,700 yard season, right? And like when we were talking about it and looking at it, I was just like, I just don't. I don't really see that happening. Meanwhile, we get two guys with like 2,000
Right.
yards rushing. Um, so and the wide receiver numbers just feel more attainable in what today's game is, and based on health and the passing game and everything. So this is there. That said, I am going with a running back. Would you like to try to guess before I actually
Ooh.
I'll let the viewers see since you can't see. Do you want to try to guess who I'm going with?
Yeah, I can't see. So let's go with. I really don't want to go. You know what? I'm gonna go Jameer Gibbs.
Oh man, yeah, I'm not hipster enough for that. That's a good one though. I do like
Okay.
Gibbs.
I
I
I
do
don't
like
know.
Gibbs.
I was like, man, what's I hips? I
No,
was definitely thinking. I was like, would Simon Duke go the hipster route or no? That's why I went
no,
there.
no.
So who is
Listen,
it?
man, Frank Ragnar retired. I'm Lions are in the tank. I'm all done, man. No, Lions are still good. Christian McCaffrey. I'm
Okay.
going with
I
Christian
mean,
McCaffrey.
yeah.
Um,
As somebody who has a unnerving amount of fantasy shares of Chris McCaffrey already, I am on board with this.
it's a real. You just. I learned a long time ago not to have any kind of faith in the medical happenings of the San Francisco 49ers, even before McCaffrey was there. Um, so whether it's been fantasy or whether it's been like actually assessing what's going to happen in the season, I try to not like put names and faces to anything other than Kyle Shanahan's going to put together a good offense. So like I know the team will be pretty good, but I'm not going to like count on what any individual player or like how good they'll really be when like we get to playoff time. But this is a volume prediction for me with McCaffrey and the Niners, as well as the talent and situation. San Fran is dealing with a bunch of injuries at wide receiver. But you know who is healthy right now? It's Christian McCaffrey, it's George Kittle, it's Trent Williams, and it's Kyle Shanahan. So even with injuries to McCaffrey and Williams last season, the Niners were top 10 in offensive DVOA, EPA per play, run success rate, rush EPA, and 12th in percentage of plays that were runs. Yes, an injury can happen at any time. But with Ayuk likely not going to be himself all season, Juwan Jennings and whatever's happening with him, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
and every depth receiver they bring in getting hurt, I'm betting that there's going to be really high volume and high success this season for McCaffrey. Schematically, I also wonder if the injuries to all those receivers and the addition of Brian Robinson Jr. could see McCaffrey in the slot a lot as a receiver again, repeating the workload he had in his 2023 Oh Boy campaign, where he led the league in yards from scrimmage with nearly 100 snaps from the slot. So like, could we give any more of that? Could we get 110, 115, and just with Brian Robinson Jr. back there? And it's like you don't know if you're getting this thumper down the middle that you need to be prepared for, or a McCaffrey on a wide receiver screen with Trent Williams out in front. If Trent Williams was hurt or McCaffrey was hurt, I would obviously feel way different about this. But the fact that both have been healthy all offseason, they've been taking it easy on those guys through camp. I never go into my like awards or predictions baking in the fact that injuries could happen because like that's just the fact for everybody. Nobody, you alluded to it. Nobody knew Mahomes was going to barrel into Rashee Rice's leg last year. Um, that I know if McCaffrey's out there, he's going to get the ball and he's going to go 100%, and he's not going to come off the field. And there's a lot of ways Shanahan can use him in this offense.
And I can't disagree because the only world I see Christian McCaffrey having a down season is if he himself is injured. I I know that that's probably rich for people to think, but he at this point has. I mean, I know that he technically didn't he play like what 2 games at the end of last year? He like did attempt to come back, right?
Yeah, he played. You're talking about McCaffrey, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He came back and played 3 games before he injured his
Okay,
PCL.
okay. He's had, I would argue, probably the most time to recover since being on the 49ers, considering the
Exactly.
49ers went to the Super Bowl the year before he got tendonitis or whatever, right?
Hmm.
And I think that recovery time is often the best medicine for these kind of guys. And not that that's groundbreaking, but for somebody like Christian McCaffrey, this is the first time he didn't have the kind of workload he did in since the year before, and the thing is also, I think for McCaffrey, he probably realizes even if it's not truly what he thinks, there's got to be a sense of like this might be it kind of thing for me.
Yep.
Like, if not now, then when for him? And I
Yep.
wonder if that alone does push him to maintain a bit. And I would argue another thing in it with the Brian Robinson of it all, right? Brian Robinson's kind of the first guy. I mean, aside from Jordan Mason last year, which that the thing is, McCaffrey was already injured, so that kind of is a mute point about Jordan Mason. But Brian Robinson's kind of the first guy that they've had behind McCaffrey in San Francisco that can actually carry like a semi large workload at a running back.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing for me is less more for McCaffrey in a way where his snap count is
Hmm.
down from like the mid 90s to high 80s, and that's just enough to where we can make this a sustainable thing for him where it's almost the explosive efficiency that a Jameer Gibbs has, like not to bring his name up again, where it feels like every time he touches the ball,
Hmm.
which we already felt that way with McCaffrey, but even more so, where it's expounded upon, where it's like every time McCaffrey gets the ball, he's doing something with it in a positive manner to the point where he might be the highest, EPA player in the league at not only at the running back position, but maybe like in general.
Yep.
I think that's probably where the argument lies for me is just slightly reduced snap counts that ends up resulting in better efficiency, better availability, to say the least. And if the 49ers have, as successful a season as we think they will, because of not only the schedule, but just because we think there's a lot of factors that are better than they were last year, because last year was truly like a year from hell for them in a weird way, probably more than people realize, then there's a very good case for McCaffrey to just be the OPOY.
And it's funny because it's the 49ers, so the whole Brian Robinson Jr. thing, he might end up being like fourth on the depth chart by week 3 and like is a total non-factor.
Right.
But just just the idea of and you mentioned the proven workload because we like it was Elijah Mitchell was supposed to be that and like he would play for a game and get hurt too. So it never really he's at least proven it. We'll see how he matches up with Shanahan in the scheme and breakdown department. But I'm looking here at McCaffrey at his career, and he gets to the 49ers and he catches, man, he did he really catch 52 balls in those 11 games? That's hilarious when he got traded to the team midseason. But then 67 catches in 2023. Like, can he get to 80 catches and like 600 yards plus when he won Old Boy 2 years ago, he had 1,459 yards, even like 1,300 yards on the ground. What did I say? 600 yards
Through the air.
through the air, 1,900 all-purpose yards. Like if he does that and they're a top 7 offense and they win the division and he's healthy all year and he gets a bunch of touchdowns, like I think it's just a volume thing. Now again, this could all, and I loved your point. I also wrote that down. When he goes out with that knee injury, when he tries to come back, he's ultimately probably saving himself a little bit, getting that extra rest on the Achilles stuff. So, yeah, we will certainly see. But I think everything, Marcus Valdez Scantling joining the or Marquez Valdez Scantling joining the practice squad isn't swaying me from Christian McCaffrey should get 100 snaps out of the slot.
One
That's for sure.
one one last thing relating to CMC in the slot. Schematically, we haven't really seen this modern version of the Kyle Shanahan offense without Debo Samuel involved in some facet.
Yeah.
I wonder if we see CMC take
Mm,
not the exact same role by any
that's
means,
fun.
but if we see him kind of take some of that responsibility in the Shanahan offense to the point where that's where a lot of the through the air opportunities come is because he's filling the pseudo Debo Samuel role while Brian Robinson is still being able to be a rushing threat in the backfield. Like that's the more interesting wrinkle to me for this argument.
It's not the
is
wide receiver slash that could play running back. It's the running back that
yeah,
could play wide receiver. I like that. You
yeah.
can fill a lot of gaps. Just looking at our lads and the roster machinations right now, that right at cut down time are weird because guys will get put on IR and guys will get signed back, and some guys clear waivers. Some guys are veterans, just cut and sign back. Some guys go to practice squad. But right now, the 49ers have four receivers on their 53-man roster, and two are in red, being injured players. So I
One is also suspended.
that too. And the other is Sky Moore. So there's not a lot going on in the 49ers receiver room at this point. So we'll see. But I think the volume and all that stuff is there. All right, let's move on to Defensive Player of the Year. Peyton, who you got?
I this argument is going to be short because if I'm being truthful, I this one I just went with the eye test. I,
That's fair.
I hate
It's pretty
to
good.
be really basic, but it's Aiden Hutchinson, the guy who I thought was going to be the defensive player of the year before
I
he
know.
snapped his leg like Anderson, or not Anderson Varejao. What was the UFC fighter's name? The Brazilian dude.
Oh, geez.
Gosh,
Silva?
yeah, Anderson Silva.
There you go.
When he wrapped his leg around like a rubber band, that's exactly what happened to Aiden.
Uh,
Yeah,
Bearjaw could probably do that too, now that I think about it.
well, I just named another Brazilian athlete instead of the UFC fighter. Instead, I named a Cavs center. But anyways, Aiden Hutchinson before the injury was seen as the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. He was having
Oh, yeah.
a awesome early start to the season up until that Cowboys game where he broke his leg and was out for the rest of the year, despite like a weird like, oh, he might come back for the playoffs, and then that never came to fruition. Um, I just think that I've seen enough from what I've seen when he's on the field to where if he's on the field and he's healthy, he's going to rival, and it's not all about sacks necessarily, but he's going to rival impact on a game similar to TJ Watt at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about if you have one of these guys that's in that caliber of pass rusher, there's a likelihood they're at some point going to win Defensive Player of the Year. And I'll take my odds that with a healthy Lions defense, big caveat because last year it was like historically bad health luck. And for me, a lot of this also rides on the idea that the secondary, when healthy for the Lions, is legitimately really good. Um, because a lot of the sack production that typically kind of bolsters up these defensive player of the year candidates for these edge rushers is a lot of the time due in part to the defensive backs just doing a great job in creating coverage sacks to maybe like kind of cushion
Mm-hmm.
those numbers to where whenever these voters get up to the ballot and they see Aiden Hutchinson has, one or two more sacks than the other guys who are sitting there as candidates, and they're watching the same guy that all of us are watching, that even though sacks aren't truly like what I mean, sacks are not everything, but I know how these things typically go, and if you are the leader in sacks, and even if it's not because you were just wrecking the game, if it's because your defensive backs were generating awesome coverage to where the quarterback's just having to sit back there for forever and you're the lucky guy who gets tackling in the backfield, doesn't matter. They still count, and the voters still look at that as this like end all be all statistic a lot of the times. Um, and truthfully, I don't see any world outside of health, and not only for himself but health on the defense, which I mean, unless this is like a 49ers offense situation for the Lions where it's just like they're the defensive version of that. There's no way they're going to be as injured as they were last year. And even without Aaron Glenn at DC, I still think that there's enough stability, especially on the roster. Like, it doesn't feel like anybody on the defense really left. That was a key part of the defense, that unless I'm forgetting somebody.
They
To the
replaced
point.
Carlton Davis with DJ Reed,
Oh
and
well, yeah,
Davis was
yeah,
1 year stopgap.
yeah, yeah.
Didn't
Right,
didn't
I
play
did forget about that.
too
But
too many games.
that's not enough of a difference for me
Right.
to feel any different about the defense as a whole. So, um, that's my pick. I'm not gonna belabor the points anymore, considering that I do not have any more statistics to present to you for Aiden Hutchinson. I just think he's a really good player, and I think the defense for the Lions is going to be really good.
Hutch is awesome. I love Hutch. I love that he's not just a pass rusher, despite the fact that he's 6'7", 270. Like he drops back a lot too for his position. And when he does, it's not even just like, oh, just like take a couple steps back and like basically try to bat the ball down essentially from like, your what you could essentially do at the line of scrimmage. He's like in zone coverage and actually doing stuff and like making real plays, which is really, really cool. I've called him a defensive weapon a bunch of times. Not that I'm unique in that sort of sense, but um I you mentioned the health of the defense. They can't be as hurt as last year, right?
There's no way.
Um, Here are the guys on IR right now.
I know there's still some, but like
Uh, Aleem McNeil, and I guess I should be specific. These guys are on PUP. Aleem McNeil, Malcolm Rodriguez, Levi Onwuzurike, Josh Pascal is on NFI. Ennis Rakestraw is on IR. He didn't really get to do too much last year, but not probably not doing much this year either. So they're already banged up, which isn't great. Now they have decent depth, especially at the defense tackle spot. DJ Reader, Tyler Williams will be starting there. Terrion Arnold didn't have the best rookie year at corner, but they're giving him another shot. I do really like DJ Reed. Maybe I'm not giving enough credit to that defensive backfield. Brian Branch is such a stud. Um,
Kirby Joseph still very
Kirby
good.
Joseph can make plays. I guess my question was going to be, and obviously there's the whole like, what is Hutch going to be like the year after this broken leg? So there's that aspect to it. But how good can this defense be in 2025? Because going back to 2019, the Defense Player of the Year has come from a top four defense by DVOA in 5 out of the 6 seasons. Now, that one outlier, and maybe this is your case, was TJ Watt in 2021. Pittsburgh was only 17th in DVOA last year, but Watt led the league in sacks and TFLs, and he, happened to tie the single season sack record of 22 and a half. So I have Detroit's defense, and again, maybe this is too low because they were, I think, a top 10 unit last year, borderline. I have them down in that 17 to 22 range. Just thinking about Aaron Glenn being gone, the injuries that are already piling up. Is Hutch going to be quite as good? Like, even if Hutch is 80% as good as he was in those first 5 games last season. Um, DJ Reed is stylistically like a different corner than Carlton Davis. So even if I think they're comparable talent standpoint, like what is that from a schematic and performance standpoint? Are they asking him to do the same things as Carlton Davis? I don't know. Um, where do you think this defense is going to? Is this going to be like a one of one kind of Aiden Hutchinson season, or is this defense? Am I get not giving the defense enough credit?
I I I'm pretty bullish relatively.
Yeah,
I guess compared to you, especially on the Lions defense. Like I definitely picture them more like I have them. I could really see them being as highly ranked as like seventh,
okay,
in defensive DVOA. I don't know if I'd go any higher than that, which still doesn't really help my case considering the history of it all.
but still, that I
But
mean, you know, I say top four, but I think top seven can make it work.
I think that it's enough to where I am just very bullish on the defensive backfield.
Yeah,
To the point where I still have a lot of faith in Terry and Arnold being like taking a leap in the second year because corner is such a it's such a year to year position to the point where you can have a guy be just outright dog crap at quarterback at
yep,
cornerback, and then the next year they're an all pro. Like it
yep,
doesn't make there's no rhyme or reason to when
yep.
these guys are. It's very much the football equivalent of like 3 point designated 3 point shooters, where like you know Malik Beasley whenever he's not gambling,
I was about to
has
say,
this historic season for the Pistons, but before that he literally had one of the worst 3 point shooting percentage of his career. Um, you know, so my point being that Terry and all just because he had a not stellar rookie year, I don't want to like lose faith on him still being possibly a Pro Bowl level corner that
yeah,
a lot of people thought he could be coming out of the draft. Um, and I mean, we already know that Kirby Joseph and Bryant Branch are probably one of the better safety
oh yeah,
duos in the league. And when you have that type of cushion on the back end, like it still allows you to do the things that like this modern era of defenses is doing, which is just putting a safety net over the defense, saying we're not letting you beat us on these deep explosive plays, which does help a lot with the DVOA statistics. It's just
Hmm.
keeping
Sure.
those explosive plays to a minimum. Um, with that said, I think that the weakest part of this defense is like the linebacking core, which I guess that I'm at the point where it's like, and maybe I'm too Brian Flores coded, where like you can kind of get away with some guys at linebacker if the other two units are fine, like or not fine, if the other two units are legitimately good. And I think that the other part of the Lions defense that I'm very bullish on is the interior of the defensive line, even
Yeah.
without Winzariki and oh goodness, what's the other
Ali
Ali
McNeil.
McNeil. Um, they drafted Tyleek Williams, who I think is going to be an incredible defensive tackle in the league. And I've always liked DJ Reader as a run stuffer, as a very underrated
Hmm.
interior defensive lineman. Especially with this time in Cincinnati, where it was like I was the most bullish on him. He may be kind of like he might have lost a little bit of a step, but
Yeah.
I do think that when he's not expected to be the best defensive tackle on the interior, I think he's better and more effective, which I expect Tyleek to come in and just wreck the wreck. For lack of a better way of putting it, I want to use explicit there, but I'm not going to. But you get the point. I think Tyleek's going to be pretty good right away. And whenever that's the case, I think that those two units alone, even if it linebacker it's just Anzalone and nobody else, I think you can get away with that.
And that's the thing. Like Anzalone was one of those guys that was hurt last year, so
Right,
he's your leader. He's your green dot. He's your cap. So like
right.
he is gonna make everybody around him better. So yeah, you're talking me into it. And like the big X factor I think in this is going to be what is Arnold in year two. If Terry and
Right.
Arnold, ooh, they sneaky have Rock Ya-Sin back here, who I liked like 5 years ago, and he's now
Out
listed
of
at free
Temple.
safety. So that's not a it's not a great sign, especially considering what his career last few years has been. But that does perk me up a little bit, man. When I just see Rock Ya-Sin, that just gets me going. Um, Tyler Williams is going to be like a really good run defender right away. Like that is going to translate without question. So that's going to give you a solid base for sure. And yeah, Ansel will be back. You might be right. I might have to move them up my defense rankings a little bit.
I'm not saying you
Um,
got to put him in your top 10 or anything, but
yeah, probably not getting up there. Probably the defense, man. Here, let me talk about a team that is going to be a top five defense and their best player and my pick for defensive player of the year. And it's Will Anderson of the Houston Texans. I thought Anderson had an outside shot at the award going into last year, but now I think he can be one of the front runners. Anderson plus head coach D'Amico Ryans are the engine behind this defensive turnaround in Houston. In the last 3 years, they've improved on defensive DVOA drastically, starting at 28th in 2022 to 16th in those guys' first year with the team together in 2023, and then they were third last season. Anderson is one of the best defensive players on one of the best defensive teams in the league, and that's a huge key to this award. We saw it last year with Pat Surtain and Denver. Surtain only had one interception all year. It wasn't a bunch of gaudy numbers, but we know he's one of the best, if not the best corner in the NFL, and he was on a top five defense, and he was the guy of that defense, and that got him the award last season. And Anderson's not a high sack guy, but those counting stats aren't always necessary, like I said. And where Anderson's going to thrive is as a tenacious run defender. He's going to, if he's just unstoppable to run against, and let's say he can get to 12 to 14 sacks even, I think that's going to be that like marker that the voters are going to need to see like, okay, well, at least he got, little above double digits. And then other than that, everyone's just going to know. Like everyone, and they're going to be just when it gets to week 14, 15, they're going to say, okay, who are the top five defenses? And they're going to look, and then they're going to watch some games, and they're going to be like, oh man, this Will Anderson guy, like, no one can block him. No one can do anything with him. Um, I think he's awesome. And like, I try not to buy too much into the camp report stuff, but everyone's like, he's even bigger than he was last year. He's even like freakier looking than he was last year. And I've just always like, just believed in this guy from a mentality standpoint. And what I like about Defensive Player of the Year is it always feels like this guy is next award, like it's this guy's turn, and like it probably should have been Micah Parsons for this year. He probably should have been up there for it last year, but obviously injuries last year and then all the contract stuff this year. I don't think that's going to work out. But like it's then after that it's like who is the next guy? And yeah, it's probably Hutch being from the draft before, but I'm yeah, the leg thing and Detroit like okay, maybe he needs a year to build back from that. Hopefully he doesn't get Max Crosby'd and just like he's a top three edge rusher, but like on a mediocre defense forever. But Will Anderson is going to be an all pro candidate edge rusher, which is a premium position for one of the best defenses in the NFL. So I got Will Anderson as my pick.
I don't disagree with that. The only counterpoint I would have to that is like the sack numbers portion of it, because and it's really just because the guy that he's playing opposite of is
Yes.
pretty good at that too.
Oh yeah.
So to me it's almost, and like I said, I hate that the these awards sometimes boil down to, oh, what was your stat and like your most important stat category, but like
Yep.
that's realistically that's just how the voters look at it, and like I definitely did this in mind with like who realistically can win the award.
Yes.
Now if it's like, given the caveat that it's like, if this is our like what we would do, I think I definitely get that more, because I think you and I don't really put as much of an emphasis on those counting stats. It's like, if your pressure rate is like leading the league or
Right.
close to it, and it matches up with the counting stats by like correlation, then that's a little different.
Right.
Um, but like I said, I think that because you have such a talented pass rusher opposite of him in Daniil Hunter, that that's my only caveat to Will Anderson being able to win this award without any kind of qualms about it. I
Yeah,
think that
when the voters go to look at the roster and they're like, "How's Will Anderson doing this year?" and he's got 10 sacks at week 15, and then like
right,
right above him it says Daniil Hunter 15 sacks, they're gonna be like,
or
"Oh,
like 12.
what if
Yeah,
we
it's
voted this?
like
What if we voted for this guy instead?" Or it's the whole thing about like teammates and like the vote splits, right? Even if
right.
everyone's like, "Oh, it should be a Texan," like with all stars, right in the NBA. Oh, this team needs the defensive player of the year. Well, I think it's Hunter. Well, I think it's Anderson, and then somebody else ends up winning
And
it.
and unreasonably, like, sometimes human nature can take the idea that like this X player is only doing this because they have other X player on the opposite side of them,
Right. Hmm.
and it's like more, instead of it being more, this player is a singular elite defensive player. It's more of they are the elite defensive player because of this other
Yes.
guy, which
Yeah.
that's almost the more human element to like the voting process and such, that like people do take that into account. But all in all, I think that Will is going to have, first name basis, is going to have an awesome year this year for the Texans. As I think Houston's going to be up there, probably like I think it could be like top three
Yeah.
defense.
Yep.
It's really just a matter of, is he the guy, the one who gets lucky being the leader on his team in sacks.
Yeah.
So
And unfortunately, I tried to find a nerdy way to make the case that like the sacks were gonna come, but even the advanced metrics like aren't kind to him. Like his sacks usually come like pretty late in the play because he's a hustler, right? There's a lot of these coverage sacks and a lot of just like
yeah,
I'm gonna like box the quarterback in with the tackle and not give him anywhere to go, and then I'm gonna give my he doesn't win very quick. Like he's just a hard nosed dirty work guy, so that doesn't scream like a huge sack season is coming
yeah.
unless there was a lot of development in the offseason, which could absolutely happen. So like if he gets a sack week one in like 2 seconds, I don't know who they're playing, but if he just dusts the tackle and just like it, then it's gonna be like, oh, well, like that's gonna stand out. So we'll just have to wait and see on that.
In a weird way, like if he is gonna win, not I don't I guess I don't want to say win late. I guess that's the right way to say it. If he's gonna win late, that's where a lot of his sacks are going to come from. Like the other alternative is he's just causing so many turnovers when he's set. Like if it's just
True.
like, he has 15 sacks, but 10 of them are sack
He does
fumbles, then
last
like,
year's Nick Benito, 12
yeah,
sacks,
yeah,
but three forced fumbles,
yeah,
three fumble recoveries. Yeah, he gets his hand on.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. I think that's probably the other counter to, he can still kind of do what he's been doing, but do it better in a way that's more impactful to in the voters' eyes. So
All right, now that we're done with the big three awards, this is a good time for me to talk to you guys about Box Score Network real quick. We'll let Peyton talk about two Ps here in just a second. But as you can see on the screen here, these are all the pods with Box Score Network. Make sure you guys check them out. Odds on favorite this week wrapped up their division previews by covering the NFC West. So they've done these for every single division throughout the summer. They look at the rosters, assess how they feel about them. I was on one of the shows. They do a wins prediction and just kind of where this team is at. So check out the NFC West prediction pod over on Odds On Favorite. Tricky Takes as well over their last two episodes have done an AFC and NFC kind of preview over under look ahead. And then make sure you're going to the Box Score Network YouTube channel as well, where you'll see segments from this pod, but you'll also see stuff from everybody around Box Score Network. And then Peyton, if you could go ahead and tell us what's going on over on 2Ps as we get ready for the NFL season.
Yeah. So not only are we getting ready for the NFL season, but we're also getting ready for the college football season. We have our In the Flag guys doing their thing on their podcasts. And then on 2Ps this week, we are actually going to do kind of like a pseudo college football preview. Parker is very much not the college football fan that I am. So as a result, we're kind of doing a Parker's going to ask me the questions that he wants to know about the college football season. And I'm going to sit there and try and help him out as best I can. Like a Q&A style discussion regarding this upcoming college football season. And then as an addendum to that, considering that, we were talking about college football, we're going to talk about a lot of the incoming players from college to the NFL, where we're actually going to draft our top 10 most impactful rookies for this upcoming season. To just think about like the guys who are jumping onto the scene, who are immediately going to be guys who, whenever you start watching NFL in a week, are going to be reasons why teams are really good out the gates, or even later in the season, maybe are making pushes to, go to the playoffs, or, maybe guys who are turning units into some of the better units in the league that we didn't expect. That's what we're doing this week. And yeah, that's all I have for 2Ps.
All right, so again, check out all the pods, 2Ps, Tricky Takes, in the flat. Because CONCACAF is our soccer podcast, they had a really busy summer. So if you are still itching for any of that stuff, you can go back into their archives, but they're still putting out some content. Odds on favorite, everything is there on Box Score Network. All right, I'm going to spoil these two pretty quickly here. O'Roy and D-Roy, we have the same picks, Peyton.
Shocker.
Offensive Rookie of the Year, we both have Cam Ward. I honestly don't think we're talking enough about Cam Ward, though. He's a quarterback taken number one overall. I saw a tweet today that was talking about like how every other player that was at Miami last year now in the NFL got cut this week, basically. And it's just like, did Cam Ward take like a really, really bad Miami team and just make them super relevant because he was just that good? And we were all just so convinced that this was a bad quarterback class that we're not giving him any credit. I think he's just an absolute stud. I love what he is on the field. I love what he is off the field even more. He was just named a captain for the Titans, which isn't surprising. Rookie quarterback, first overall pick, that's going to happen. But still, just a little more confirmation on what he's like on that side of it. And I think what people might be worried about, trepidatious about when it comes to Cam Ward, is we were all excited for Caleb Williams just last year, and we said he had a great situation, right? The difference is, and this is one of the takes that I know I had. I was excited about the situation for Caleb in the sense of the pass catchers, but that's all we were talking about, really. The one thing I kept trying to say, and the one thing that proved to be the issue, was the offensive line was never there for Chicago last season. Cam's supporting cast, which is good, again, Cam, first name basis, is he has a good offensive line. Maybe Calvin Ridley can be good again. I don't know, but I don't really care about that part. I like Io Manor season, baby. But that offensive line is good. Like that is five real NFL starting linemen in front of him. And that's just going to give him the opportunity to, yeah, maybe he's going to throw interceptions. Maybe he's going to make mistakes, but he's going to get to play all those situations out. He's not going to drop back and immediately be faced with pressure and have to check down or throw it in the dirt or try to run away and extend a play that he has no business doing. And I think Cam Ward also kind of knows what he is, maybe a little more than Caleb does. It's not a real scouting observation. That's just a personal hunch. But I think this is just gonna be a maybe it's not like a Jaden Daniels season or anything like that. But I think this is gonna be a really nice rookie QB season, and I'm a huge fan of Cam Ward, so this is the pick.
So to tag on to your point about the offensive line, the reason why I think it's such a big deal is because we've seen 2 years in a row where the team with the first overall pick drafted a quarterback, put them in a position with a offensive line that was not, up to snuff. And
Hmm.
then the following season, they say, crap, we need to invest heavily into
Uh-huh.
this offensive line after they've already done the bad thing, which
Yep.
is start your, rookie quarterback with I don't want to say start them with a season that, well, they start a career with a season that everybody says, should we be worried about this guy?
Hmm.
And it seems like the Titans probably took that and said, we're not going to make the same
Oh
mistake
yeah.
these two teams did,
Oh yeah.
um, which I commend them for because it would have been tragic to see that happen to Cam Ward in a similar way we've seen to Bryce and Caleb already. Um, I'm not really in particular worried about the pass catchers, to be honest. I think it's a fine group
Yeah.
for not say it this way, but I mean his receiving group at Miami was not that good. like he had Elijah Arroyo, who was a good tight end
Hmm.
prospect, and Xavier Restrepo, who for college was a great receiver,
Right.
but athletically it's just not it. And now he's going into a situation where he actually has a couple of guys, like relative to the NFL, sure, it might not be that good of a pass catching group, but it's definitely the best pass catching situation that he's ever had, like in his career.
Yeah.
So I think he definitely was like at Miami, outside of a couple of guys, was like doing a lot of making chicken salad out of chicken crap.
Hmm.
And the other thing to me that is important is that it was really hard for Tennessee to have a reliable run game to support any kind of good quarterback play, even if the quarterback were good, which the quarterback was not because Will Levis sucks. But if if they with the offensive line improvements and with the Callahans, being the ones running the show, the run game's probably going to be pretty good. Like I'm pretty bullish on Tony Pollard as
Yep.
having a big bounce back year as long as he stays healthy. And if you have a good run game to support a rookie quarterback, it typically pays pretty good dividends in how well they play. And I think that just historically speaking, if it in regards to the offensive rookie of the year, if a quarterback even has a decent season, typically they win the award. Like that's just how it goes, and especially if they're the number one pick. Like it doesn't even matter typically unless there's a rookie running back or a rookie wide receiver that like breaks the rookie record. That's usually the only case where it does happen, where they don't win the award after having a pretty good year. So I think Cam is pretty much going to be the unanimous pick. I think a lot of hipsters probably will go like the Armarian Hampton route because of just if they're bullish on the Chargers to make the playoffs, and the run game is going to be a really prominent part of that team. But to me, even if the Titans aren't anything but an 8-win team at best, right? Which some people might be a little more bullish on them at that. Um,
Jeez.
what is that good or bad?
That
G's.
sounds real high to me. That sounds real
Okay,
high. And
I
like I like a lot of what's going on, but this team won 3 games last season.
I'm aware. I'm just saying like best case. I'm saying best case scenario.
Yeah, I mean 8 games would be like lock it down. I don't even care
Yeah,
what his stats are. Like if they have a
yeah,
5 game win
yeah.
improvement,
I
that's
I
insane.
I have them more in like the 7 game range. Like
Yeah,
I like the Titans probably more than most this year as just like a team that just
I love it.
because of what we've already talked about regarding why Cam Ward will win the award. It's just there's so many more improvements they made to the offensive side of the ball that
Hmm.
it's just competency will win out a lot of the time for them. To a point where there's just no way I see them being put in some of the situations they were offensively last year.
They got my guy Gunnar Helm out of Texas too, right? Did he make the
They
53?
did, yeah. He should have. I
I
doubt
like Gunnar
they
Helm.
would cut him.
I liked him.
Um, they don't really have a ton at tight end outside of Chigakonkwo, anyways. So I would be
He
shocked
did.
if they did cut Gunnar Helm. Um, but point
Let's
being,
see. Let's see.
I think
Yep, he made it. He made
I
it.
think we agree. We agree. Cam Ward's probably going to win the award.
Yeah, Cam. Yeah,
Um,
Cam Ward's great. All right,
now
defensive rookie of the year.
Abdul Carter.
Yep, there it is.
I'll let you go ahead and go
Yeah,
first.
this
This
to
is your
me is
show
just
after all. I like how
simply
I'm running.
this to me is just simply Carter has a lot of the same traits as Jared Verse to me from last year. Just man size strength from the jump. It might not be to the degree as Verse. I don't think he's not quite as big. He's not quite as strong, but I think there will be very little of an adjustment period for Carter from a strength speed aspect. And his quickness and bend are obviously superior to Verse, like from a freaky standpoint. Um, but like Verse, Carter has just like Verse did last year, but even more so, Carter has good talent around him. So what you were talking about with Houston, Will Anderson, like Dexter Lawrence, but helps goodness gracious,
Brian Young,
Brian Burns.
Byron Young.
I said Brian
Oh
Burns.
no, Burns. Okay, we're talking about the Giants.
And
Whoops.
then Brian Burns helps Kayvon Thibodeau, and the Kayvon Thibodeau helps Abdul Carter, and it all just works together, right? So like his stats might be even better than Verse, and Verse like had higher sack numbers than we thought he would coming out, because I think it was underplayed how freakishly strong and just ready he was going to be right away, and I think Carter is 75-80% of the Verse strength, but 140% of the actual like pass rushing tools, and has, for as much as I like Kobe Turner and Brian Young and all those guys in LA, like this is even better that he's going to New York. So even if the Giants are just a mess, like Carter's just gonna have so much freeway to just get after the quarterback and play downhill, and he's not gonna back down from anything. So Carter's just a freaking stud. So it helps also being a premium position and being the third overall pick. And yeah, Abdul Carter, D Roy.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will add to that, and we can move on to the next one. This is in a weird way the opposite of like the Will Anderson counterpoint I made, because I did look at this, and you really don't have to, as a pass rusher, or like what we would consider a pass rusher, whether it's interior or outside, maybe it's like a outside linebacker that's like a designated pass rusher, in the rookie season, you really don't have to have that high of sack numbers.
Mm-mm.
10 of the last pass rushers to win Defensive Player of the Year, only 4 of them reached double digit sacks. Like a lot of them were like hovering around that like 7 to like 8.5, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, if they weren't one of the 4 that reached double digits. So in a weird way, this is kind of like the opposite argument of Will Anderson, where like Brian Burns actually does kind of help Abdul Carter's case, because if Abdul Carter is the better I think he's going to be better than Brian Burns, but because he has Brian Burns on the other side, he probably will be able to like get, even if it isn't double digit sacks, like he'll be able to get to that respectable threshold of that like 7 sacks to 9 sacks. That's probably going to be enough to win the award.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
so that's all I have to say about
I
Abdul
wanted to
Carter.
come with a spicy take of like Abdul Carter sets rookie season sack record, but I looked that up and that's like 21 and a half set by someone from the 70s. And I was like, all right, let me
I
bring this
I
back in.
have I have an interesting, like, just to throw this out there, because we haven't really talked about any like honorable mentions, so to speak. I didn't pick it because I feel like I would be stupid to not pick up Lil Carter. I did have another player that I considered though, like just to throw it out there.
It's gonna make me barf. You got me worried. Who is it?
I considered putting Michael Williams in this
Oh,
spot.
that's fine. Yeah, being coached by Robert Saleh, all the tools.
Yeah,
Gonna be a good
playing
run defender immediately, so he'll be on the field. I don't
yeah
mind that.
playing opposite of Bosa, and maybe
Yeah,
like he become just right away. Maybe he surprises us and is a better pass rusher than we even thought he could be right away.
yeah.
Considering that's like the unknown part that we have no idea if he's going to be good at or not. That was like the only other case I could think of
No, I see
outside
that.
of Abdul.
All right, let's get to your coach of the year pick.
So this one is another pretty popular pick.
Hmm.
It's a team that a lot of people think is going to make a vast improvement and very quickly go from rebuilding to competing. I believe they're. I don't know if they're favored to make the playoffs, but they're pretty close to it. Like their odds to make the playoffs are pretty high.
Their over under is like 8.5, so it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. It's Mike Vrabel for the New England Patriots. I'm not currently picking them to make the playoffs, which you
This is
don't
tough.
necessarily have to make the playoffs to win Coach of the Year,
Yeah,
all the time. So it's not unheard of that happens. But to go from a bottom 4 team to a 9 to 10 win team competing for the playoffs usually warrants Coach of the Year garnering.
hmm
And to me, it's like a couple of things. If the first off, if the defense is going to be as good as we think it is under Vrabel, a lot of the credit's going to go to him. It's
Hmm.
not going to be some individual player on the team on that
Right.
side of the ball. It's going to be Vrabel came in and established this as like the heart of the team. And then in addition to that, the thing that a lot of people think is Drake May takes the second year leap, right?
Right.
Which I also think will happen. And although Vrabel might not be, even like I know that he was at the helm for some surprisingly productive Titans offenses
Hmm.
at the time, he probably won't get like the full credit, but just the ability to just have just establish like a I don't know what the best way to communicate it is, but like essentially the having an adult in the room, like a guy who knows
Exactly.
what he's doing, as opposed to Drameo, who clearly was incapable of, coaching a team. Even if that's not Vrabel's forte, like having somebody there and bringing back McDaniels as well, like it's
Yep.
somebody who I think that he's probably going to be able to work well with, considering that McDaniels as an OC is pretty awesome.
Yep.
and
Hmm. Hmm.
um, I think that May's leap a lot of people would probably attribute some of that to Vrabel coming in and creating an environment for him to thrive in.
Yeah.
So that's my argument for Vrabel. I think that if the Patriots are as good as people kind of hope they're going to be, a lot of the credit, like while Drake May will probably get a good amount of it, a lot of the credit's going to be on Mike Vrabel. And typically that's the type of narrative you have to have about a coach in order to win the award.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think that he's the ultimate floor raiser. McDaniels is the ultimate floor raiser, and they might both get to kind of ride the wave of Drake May's like natural season two progression. And it's the storyline of Rabel coming back to New England and like reestablishing the Patriot way, which is funny because I was supposed to be what Gerard Mayo was continuing anyways, but
Right.
he get he gets to be the scapegoat for what was May's rookie season and maybe some bad draft picks that are almost all off the team at this point, which is pretty funny. All right,
Yeah, Cole
my
Strange
coach.
got released today, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
My coach of the year is a lot of the same of what you're talking about, but it's a team that I think is making an even bigger leap than New England, and it's Liam Cohen of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, if you guys listened and watched the episode last week with John Bueller, who was doing his over under on the Jags and took the under, and he called Liam Cohen a raging dork who can't relate to the players. Shout out to John because that got me, and then I was like, real. I had already made this pick, and I was like, oh man, is that gonna happen? This sucks. What if he is a raging dork? And yeah, Mike Vrabel just like through and through football like this. Oh, this could be terrible. But here's the thing: I'm all in on Cohen in Jacksonville, man. A lot of people were excited about the Tampa Bay offense when it was coached by Canales, right, 2 years ago. Well, Cohen took that group from 20th in offensive DVOA to 7th last year, and 14th to 15th in EPA per play, and 20th to 4th in points per game. It's a worse offensive line in Jacksonville, but I'd argue a much more talented quarterback. And on the whole offensive line thing, everyone's looking at 2024 and saying the Bucks offensive line, me included, is like a top 3 offensive line. We didn't think that going in, man. We are like, I don't know about this Luke Gadecki guy. Cody Mauch had a rough rookie year. Is he going to be good in year 2? Cody Barton is of playing center for the first time since his freshman year of college, and he's doing it in the NFL. There were Tristan Wirfs is moving to the left side. Where that like we had questions about that 2024 line, so I think Cohen has to get some credit for how that went. Um, but everyone's just saying it's the offensive line, so everyone's like, yeah, they had a good offensive line. It's whatever. What if Walker Little and Anton Harrison are both like playable tackles this year after they haven't been? What if um what if Patrick McCarry is just like that steady veteran who's like way better than anyone realized because he was always like the number 6 in Baltimore and he just plays well? What if Robert Hainsey, who's been a backup in Tampa Bay, who was a backup in Tampa Bay last year because he got benched, he just brings all this starting experience that he's just like fine at center. There's so many avenues where this line is like actually way better than we're projecting right now, and like that might be 2 years in a row where we're like, huh, maybe Liam Cohen's just good with offensive linemen. Like I don't want to compare him to Shanahan, but like he's one of the better OCs. Cohen is, Like Shanahan's offensive lines always perform well, even though the individual talent isn't great. And it's based on how he schemes them up. So why can't Cohen do that with another group? We'll see. Um, I think Jacksonville makes the AFC's biggest leap, and they complete for maybe even the division, but certainly a spot in the playoffs, as well as they're going to be in that top 10 offensive conversation. So I think all those things just scream a coach of the year for Cohen. I think he'll be right in there with Vrabel, but I think Jacksonville, because it's going to be a higher ceiling offense, is going to make a bigger leap than New England is in 2025.
I can't argue with that because of things that we'll discuss later in this podcast. Um, I did consider Liam Cohen because, and really the difference between Liam Cohen and Vrabel to me was how much of the success of the team is going to be attributed to the coach.
Hmm.
Because I think people might be more. I think if Jacksonville is as good as we think, especially on offense, right? Like the offensive
Yep.
rejuvenation, so to speak, from a team that where offensively we were actually pretty excited about them, whatever it was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm trying to remember at this point. Um, where Trevor Lawrence looked like he was going to emerge as like a top 10 quarterback in the league. And then very much kind of took a step back
Hmm.
and then proceeded to get injured. I wonder if the Jaguars' offensive success would be just as attributed to Trevor Lawrence's kind of revival. Like he's finally healthy again. This is the quarterback we always thought he could be. He just kind of had to figure it out for himself and work the kinks out. I wonder if the narrative is more driven towards Trevor Lawrence is the reason why the offense is really good, as opposed to Liam Cohen is the reason why the offense is really good. Which that sure, to us, it might seem obvious. Like, yeah, Liam Cohen
Right.
is the reason why Trevor Lawrence is good again.
Yeah.
But that's just not always how people think. Like whenever, especially whenever it's Trevor Lawrence, we're talking about who was, you know, savior. Like the elite of elite prospects that was expected to be like the next, guy. He was kind in a weird, in a way,
He was the
he's the
best college quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck when he was coming out. That's what
right,
they were saying.
right,
And
very
then
much
since Peyton Manning. So he was in a class with those guys.
right. So I wonder if that element of this does impact how people would feel about Liam Cohen in Coach of the Year standing. If Jacksonville is as good as we think that they're going to be, that's really my only counter to it. Other than that, I think that Liam Cohen definitely has a chance to be the Coach of the Year, given I do think Jacksonville's going to be pretty good. Um, but we can talk about that, like the team aspect of it, here in a bit. But I don't think it's too far off to say that he should be up there with Vrabel and like a couple other guys as like the leaders in the clubhouse for Coach of the Year.
I think enough people have jumped off of the Lawrence bandwagon, being that they'll run to give credit to Cohen. If whatever that segment of people is, because you're right, there is going to be a segment of people that are like, this was always in Lawrence, like he was always going to get here. They're going to be like the Snyder heads of DC fandom, where they're still talking about the Snyder Cut 10 years later of a bad movie, and they see James Gunn's Superman, and they're like, Snyder would have done this. The Snyder bot's coming in. Um, Trevor Lawrence was always going to do this. He was, and I say that as a guy that is like Trevor Lawrence. Um, I had this stat as well. So Baker is a guy that everyone's like calling back into the top 10 quarterback race, right? Well, for again, I had those stats about the Bucks offense under Canales versus Cohen. Same thing for Baker. He was 16th in EPA per play in his 2023 season with Canales, where we were all like, "Whoa, Baker's back! This is incredible." He was really just like league average quarterback, but he jumped to fifth last year under Cohen. I don't think Baker's that different of a guy than he was in 2023, than he was in 2022, than he was in 2021. It's just a matter, and like I don't think Baker's bad. I think Baker is a good quarterback. I think Lawrence has better
Definitively.
like actual just talent to him. So if this is what Cohen did to Baker, like I think yeah, that would be pretty what transitive property
Right.
of that's him doing this with Lawrence as well. But it is, it's also about what Lawrence has in him. Um, let's zoom through these next couple here. Your executive of the year. We don't want to give too much credit to these guys because like they're so far away, but we like this side of the game, and we these guys do put the teams together. So who's your executive of the year?
Monty Ossenfort is the guy. I think this is a guy who has typically the awards go to teams that have a great amount of success due to like additions that have been made. Typically, it's that previous offseason. But I would argue that they do account for you've been building up to this iteration of the team and you've kind of homegrown this thing, or some balance of homegrown slash you've handpicked free agents or like players acquired in trades to build out this team. And Austin Ford over the last like 3 years has really been kind of
Hmm.
building up to this iteration of the team. I feel like the Cardinals. Like, again, this is like another team we're going to discuss here later in the podcast. But um, if I think they're as good as they're going to be, and I'm not saying they're going to be like all world, but if have as much success as I think they will, I think the credit will be to Austin for rebuilding the roster, like I said, through the draft and finding like the value free agents that he handpicked, especially this offseason. Um, his hit rate over like over the draft over the last three or in the draft over the last 3 years is a big factor in my thinking. Eight starters were drafted in the last 3 years on the 22-man starting, both sides of the ball.
Hmm.
And then in addition to that, six defensive starters were acquired via free agency or trade. Two from last year, one of them Baron Browning, one of them, now I'm forgetting the other one because I'm forgetful and I don't remember who it is. Oh, good. Mac Wilson. Goodness. I was
There
trying to
you go.
remember which one it was. And then four additional starters, if you look on like the Arlad's depth chart,
Hmm.
are were brought in this offseason via free agency.
Right.
And so it seems like they've really given this as the best shot to kind of dictate whether or not like Kyler Murray is going to be good enough to lead its team like a roster like this to a playoff berth and like have some kind of real success outside of just putting up numbers. But also like this is the best defense I think this team has had in a long time. And with Jonathan Gannon being the head coach, very what everybody thinks is like a defensive. I don't want to call him a genius. Like I don't think people think of him as like the Fangio
I don't think
level
so. Hmm.
scheme lord, but he's kind of like a step below that. And I think given the tools that he now has in the toolbox, thanks to Austin Ford, I think that the Cardinals defense could easily go from being like one of the worst in the league to very much being coming like a borderline top 10 defense in the league, like surprisingly really good um, throughout the season. And if that's the case, considering that I think that whenever Kyler is playing good enough, and if they have it, like this is by far, like I said, the best defense I think he's ever had. Um, I think they're a playoff caliber team. And if that's the case, I think that like a lot of the credit's probably not going to go to Kyler so much as it is for, wow, look what Monty Osford did. Look at all these guys he brought in through free agency. Look, he found Will Johnson, which I'm really high on Will Johnson. Found Will Johnson. Will Johnson's like their number one corner, and is automatically like a borderline Pro Bowler. All these narratives about how good, Walter Nolan. I know he started on the pup, but like Walter Nolan is like immediately a bona fide pass rusher. Calais Campbell brought in the right veterans to support all these young guns that they have on the defense. I think there's just a lot of narratives driving that he could end up winning the executive of the year.
You answered all the questions I had except for what's the win threshold for us to say this is this is a good thing that he put together. Agree. They stuck with Kyler when it would have been really easy in 2023 when Austin Ford was brought on. I think that was right after Kyler's injury too. So it could have been we're going to move on from Kyler now. That was the old regime's mistake. He brings in the coaching staff that's all still here, all the free agency moves this year, all the draft picks. He built this team. This is his team. So what's the win number that has to happen for us to then say this is good enough to then give him the award?
I think it might be a little rich, but I'm probably going to say 10 wins. I think that there is a case to be made like they push for the division. Um
Yeah.
I if they win a division, like it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
But I think that spoiler alert, I do have them as like a wild card team in
Hmm.
my like official predictions, which I already did that on a previous episode on 2Ps. So like if you listen there, then you'd already know this. Um, but I think that making the playoffs for a team that I believe has not made the playoffs
Yeah.
um, under Kyler would be enough to, if it's double digit wins that for that matter, would be enough of a threshold for him to win this award.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. Yeah, 10 wins last time an executive of the year got it on 10 wins was just Bill Belichick in 2021, so not long ago, the first post Brady year, and they make it into the playoffs as a 5 seed or 6 seed or whatever it was, on just 10 wins, and they gave it to Bill for that, and then the team would soon go in the toilet right after, so that's hilarious. All right, my pick quickly is Eric DeCosta of the Baltimore Ravens. Similar to what you're saying, he's just never won it. Um, Brad Holmes winning it again last year made me
That
kind
was
of a
kind of
little
weird.
less sure of what we're doing with this award, to be honest with you. Maybe it's just that he's like the most known right now. But here's the thing. Here's the only thing I came to was they had 15 wins, and they had the depth on the defensive roster to sustain all those injuries. That I was like, wow, he like they must be doing something good from the personnel department. So for me, with DaCosta and the Ravens, I think the Ravens are going to have the most regular season wins this year. That's where I'm projecting them to be, and it's going to kind of be a DaCosta, same thing what you're saying. DaCosta's really put this thing together. He managed to keep Lamar around. He brought in Derrick Henry when everyone kind of wrote off Henry. He helped usher in like a new offensive, staff. The Kyle Hamilton pick and extension, by the way, which just happened today. Like he's just built this really good team that has the most wins this year. So it's a little Brad Holmes of 2024, where I'm just thinking the Ravens are going to be the best regular season team. So I've got Eric DaCosta.
Can't disagree.
All right, division winners. These ones we got two apiece. For people who didn't listen to last year's show, we decided maybe I don't know if I should or should not give Peyton credit. I don't know what he thinks or what you guys think is good. To name these after the winningest players in each division, the highest winning percentage, which is funny to me because it's always kickers or punters. Because those guys just stay on the team forever. If the team is good, a good team does not change out their kicker, or in one team's case, a punter. And so all these awards are named after specialists, which let's give a little hand to specialists. So for the AFC East, it is our Stephen Gostkowski Award. Who Peyton? We both. I'll just say this: we both said the Bills. Anything of note here for you on the AFC East?
I think the only note is just I this feels like maybe the easiest. I was gonna say the easiest road they've had to a division title in a while, but I guess that might be not doing the Dolphins a good enough service for what they were before really last year. I mean it's pretty much like they've had a handle on the division for a few years now, and I don't see the rest of the division providing enough competition to
Bills,
plainly put.
easy. Jason Elam Award for the AFC West champion. Here's our first difference, Peyton. I've obviously, based on everything I said about Patrick Mahomes, have the Kansas City Chiefs. You have the Denver Broncos.
This is just maybe me being a little contrarian, and this is maybe me being way too invested in like hipster takes and
Mm.
such, but I do think they are my pick to have the best defense in the league. I very much believe in obviously health permitting, that with the additions they made in the offseason, I just don't see another defense amounting to. I mean, maybe Houston, maybe Baltimore, but like it's not really up for debate to me. Who that I just think they're the best defensive unit in football, and offensively, I do think that there's more to Bo Nix than what we saw towards the end of last year,
Hmm.
to the point where they do have, I would argue, like significantly better weapons, even if it is just RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins in the backfield, and adding Evan Ingram as your joker, as they want to call him in that Peyton offense. Um, and even drafting like Pat Bryant in the third round, I think that they've improved the actual weapons enough to the point where I think there is grounds to where Bo can take that leap enough to where the Denver Broncos offense can improve on what they looked like towards the end of last season. Um, and really, it's just more of a bet on the Chiefs' schedule being really tough to the point where I think there might be like a game or like a tiebreaker that the Broncos win. That the Chiefs just have it. I don't necessarily think that the Chiefs are a worse team than the Broncos. I think this is just more so. I went through the schedule and like odds are that there probably is going to be a situation where the Broncos maybe just because of it being a slightly easier schedule have one more win or win a tiebreaker over the Chiefs. That's all it is.
And here's the thing for the listeners: 3 or 4 division winners change every single year. Now, I'm going to take the L at some point on this because I only have 2 changes. Even one of them I kind of forced. Um, like last year, I made sure to predict. I think I did 4 changes just because like the numbers say it's going to be 4. This year, I just opted to say instead of being wrong on those 4, anyways, just pick the ones that I think it's going to happen, and I'll be wrong on 2 because I'm not guessing 2, but maybe I get the 2 changes right. Um, for Denver versus Kansas City, I think if I didn't so firmly believe the Kansas City offense would be different, like if Kansas City was the same team they were last year, and granted they won 15 games last year, but a lot of those were the one-score games. If I was baking in some regression on that, and even if I was just like, the same team as last year, but let's say 11 wins, I can see the world where Denver gets to 12 because I could see a number one offense. And although I think there is a ceiling on Bo Nix, that doesn't mean I think we're at it yet. And I think year 2 of Sean Payton with Nix, year 3, year 2 of Sean Payton with an entire offense with a quarterback he actually likes, I think their run game schematically can be better. Not just like different running backs, but okay, I can just put more on this offensive line because they're the best pass pro unit in the league. Now I can make them do a little bit more in the ring. So I think there is a lot of natural progression that's going to happen for Denver. I just also think Kansas City is going to be an even better team than they were last year. AFC South. I have the Houston Texans. Everything I said about them earlier with defense player, I think they're going to be one of the best defenses. I think they're going to be back to at least average on offense. But you have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I already said everything I said about Liam Cohen. I think they're going to make a huge jump, be right in the thick of it. But you have them winning the division.
Yeah, this is just a matter of again going through like a couple iterations, and this is another. I think Jags and Texans are both like 10-win teams to me.
Yeah.
Um, it's really a matter of I think that just like you, I think that Liam Cohen is going to immediately come in and turn this offense around, and they could very well become like a top 10 unit by the end of the year. And on the other side of the ball, with the defense in particular, like Jags defense is just it kind of is what it is. Like it's gonna be probably below average to maybe like
Hmm.
average at best, but if you have a top 10 offense and you're able to be around that range of a defense, you can you're more likely to win games that way than to have it be the reverse, where you have a below average offense, to and then you're like a fringe top 10 defense. It just typically in this day and age, it just doesn't result in the same amount of winning games. And that's kind of where I don't want to say kind of where I find the Texans. The Texans are a unique case because I do find that I don't really believe in their offense a ton this year, unfortunately, because I love CJ Stroud and Nico Collins and a couple of the Iowa State guys they picked. But ultimately speaking, I think the offensive line, I'm not buying it. Like I understand their argument is like less is more. I don't think that's the case. Ariante Aristry, liked you as a prospect. Good luck starting week 1 and being able to keep up with these guys. I don't know that that's going to be how this goes. Damian Pierce, we already did this song and dance. I don't think he's that great of a running back. There's just not a lot of things lining up for the Texans offense that I love hearing coming out of the gates. Obviously, defense, I agree with you. Like definitely top like 6, could be top like 3, somewhere in there. It's very good. So that's where I think they are probably going to win a lot of games because of the defense. But I'm going to err on the side of caution that the Jags offense does kind of provide a different dynamic to that team that makes them more balanced than the Texans are. And that's where I kind of lied on the Jags versus Texans argument.
I came out very close on these teams. I think I ended up giving Houston 11 wins and Jacksonville 9. I will say, if Jacksonville was doing what I would prefer, which is Travis Hunter is more of a full-time corner and then a slightly more part-time receiver, I feel better about that defense being like average instead of mediocre, and then maybe the offense is like not top 10, but like 12th, like slightly above average. I would feel better pushing that to like 10 wins. And with Houston, I was making the case for their offensive line when I went back and was watching from last year, and I was like, Cam Robinson, for what he did last year and what he is, better than people are giving him credit for. Like to say he is playing for 3 teams in 2 seasons is like kind of kind of painting it in a more negative light than it really is.
Yes, I can agree with
And
that.
like Arion Terriers being like the developmental swing tackle was like awesome. So I was like, ooh, there's some depth here. And then the fact that it went from Ursary maybe beating out Blake Fisher for right tackle was like, yikes, Blake Fisher, like it's not gonna work out, to then
Right.
like, oh, they're trying to trade Cam Robinson because Arion Terriers is gonna be the left tackle. It was like, oh, okay, maybe this is actually in a lot worse of a spot than even I thought. Um, and even though was making a case, I still only had him at like 25 or 26. I wasn't like super excited. So like maybe if things were slightly different or this was a slightly different time I was making this, I would have them both at 10 and 10, kind of like you, and then I could lean Jacksonville. But I went with Houston, and this is the Adam Vinatieri Award, by the way. Let's round out the AFC, go to the AFC North, where we both have the Baltimore Ravens winning the Gary Anderson Award. Um, like I said, I think this is going to be the best team in football, one of two that are going to be top 10 in both offense and defense for me. I got Eric DeCosta winning Executive of the Year, like I said, so I think this was pretty open shut.
Thank God for Gary Anderson because that award could have a very different, unfortunate name for the time being. So, shout out to
Moving
Gary
on
Anderson.
to the NFC East. Uh, our one punter here, the Jeff Fiegels Award for the Giants punter, uh, for the division that hasn't had a repeat winner in 20 years, or however many, it's probably like 25 by now. I feel like I've been saying 20 years for 5 years. We both have the Philadelphia Eagles. Any concern for you on the NFC East curse or coming off of a Super Bowl win or anything like that?
I am just way too logically sound to like believe in Parker's like voodoo thing that he's like somebody else is gonna win the division like and he because he did it again and picked somebody else to win the division. I'm like I appreciate the respect for history, but this is one of those I'm not gonna do it. I cannot pick like even if I did like Washington as much as like some people do. I think they're a very popular regression candidate, which I am on board with. But like, and even if I thought that Micah Parsons is going to sign and the Cowboys are going to be fixed, they're not the Eagles. Like, sorry about it. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, the Cowboy, because I am a stitious person. I am a superstitious person, and I would have done that, but I just couldn't even get myself to the argument for what the other team would be, considering the way the Eagles have
Correct.
just insulated themselves. So I'll just go down with the ship on this one. Whatever weird thing happens, it will be what it will be. The NFC West champion is the Mike Kofer Award. And whoever number 9 is behind Mike Kofer, who was the holder on that kick, there were not a lot of pictures of kickers from the 70s and 80s that I could get with appropriate for this project here. But we both have the San Francisco 49ers. This was my team that I had tied for the division, and I just needed at least a second change. And Payne, you know how I feel about the 49ers. You know, I'm generally just like bad vibes on the 49ers. I'm not in on it. But like I think fate decided for me that I just need to go this way. And it's because I believe in Shanahan and I believe in Saleh. And we've said it throughout. I said everything I said about the offense. It's going to be top 10 no matter what. I don't like this defensive roster at all. Like the names are just pretty atrocious at this point. Fred Warner's great. Nick Bosa, is what he is when he's healthy. And then, I like Michael Williams. But if Robert Saleh wasn't coaching this defense, I would think this is going to be a bottom 5 group this year, and it's just not going to be because Saleh's back. So they do, and the Stafford injury is like just enough off of the like theoretical train and into the reality train, even though right now he's quote unquote practicing. It's just enough in the sign in the field of realism that I'm like, okay, let me just project that a little bit, and I'll give the slight edge to the 49ers.
I also picked the 49ers and like while it does seem like I like the defense a little bit more than you. I'm not saying they're like good by any means, but like they're I I I almost I like them a little better to the point where like I almost picked John Lynch to be like a candidate for
Ooh,
executive of the
okay.
year, because I do think which maybe we've discussed this and maybe I'm like forgetting that I already made this point in your podcast at some point, but I do think there's a chance that like this front four immediately is one of the best run stopping units in the
Wow.
NFC,
Okay.
and I that's
Mhm.
really a bet on rookies, which is never a good thing to
Right.
do. like I'm betting
Ooh.
on all three guys. I think it's three guys that they drafted
Hmm.
hitting as run defenders, which is rich, I know, but
I'm also
ultimately,
like an what's the word I'm looking for? Like an unusually low person on Alfred Collins. Like I think everyone
okay.
thinks like Alfred Collins is what he is, but like I was not an Alfred Collins guy like whatsoever. So I view that as like it's gonna sound so harsh. This is so stupid for me to say. But like I like he's like a zero for me. I'm like a just like we'll
That's
just wait and see.
that's understandable, but it's the fact that they went out and also got CJ West next to
I
him
do like
that
CJ West. I do
where
like
it's like even if you don't love Alfred Collins, having CJ West next to him, it's almost like the situation that we not to like compare different positions, but it's almost the situation that we have going on in Vegas with their two wide receivers they drafted, where like Deontay Thornton's the better receiver than Jack Besh early on, but that doesn't mean that Jack Besh is like a
yeah.
zero, you know, for the
Or
team.
every 49ers running back that there's ever been.
Correct, exactly. So
The one in the
I
fifth round is better than the one in the third round.
So, and maybe that's the case. Maybe this transfers over to the DTs where CJ West is immediately better than Alpha Collins, but that doesn't mean that Alpha Collins is a bad player. He's just not the better of the two. And, anyways, all that to say, I also picked the Niners, but this was very much a situation where I also had like a tiebreak situation, where I don't even want to say tiebreak, where it was like a one win difference, where I have the 49ers winning like 11 games and the Cardinals I have is like a 10-win team. And that could be the difference between the Niners sweeping the Cardinals or the Cardinals going 1-1 or even 2-0 against the Niners. And I I'm very much buying like drinking the Kool-Aid on the Cardinals as like a sneaky team in this division, but I will go with the Niners just cuz I mean the schedule is just way too friendly for me to not. That's really what it boils down to.
And on the Collins front, I was trying to remember the 49ers defensive line coach, but he's just like a famed like developer. So between him and Salah, like I should probably be looking at the 100th percentile outcome for what Alfred Collins could be as a rookie. So um, yeah, I think the defense is going to be better than what it is on paper because of the coaching. The Morton Anderson NFC South Champion Award. We both gave it to the Bucks. We're not expecting any big changes here.
I think that I will say offensively the Chris Godwin to Jalen McMillan to Kate Otten to Tristan Wirfs injury just glut that like glut I don't know what the word I'm looking for is like the group of injuries that those
Yeah.
particular players not making me feel great going into the season on offense. So just kind of keep an eye on it because I made this prediction before I like really diagnosed the status of what like today we got news that Kadon's probably gonna miss time,
Mm.
um, and that even though I knew that Chris Godwin starting on the pup or came off the pup.
He just passed his physical. Was it today or yesterday? Him and Wirfs both just passed their
Okay,
physicals. Now
that's
again,
good.
passed their physical. Like, does that mean they're going to play week one? I don't know, but like
Yeah,
they're not going on IR or anything like that.
yeah.
So
I wonder if like early on people get a little worried about the Bucks, and then
mhm.
it's like everything's fine after a couple weeks after the guys get back. So just something to monitor. That's all.
I just think that Falcons defense is going to be so bad again that I'm
See,
not.
that's like
I
I
just
that's another one that I'm like way different on than other people.
Man, we're gonna
Like
have to do a whole defense thing. All right, this is
yeah,
fine. All right, we'll save that. Put a pin in that one.
yeah,
NFC North champ. We both have a different team than last year's winner. We both have a different team than last year's second place. We both went Green Bay Packers.
yeah. I very bullish on the Packers. I am. I talked about it on our podcast. I think that Jordan Love is going to make significant leaps in his where we think of him as a quarterback in the QB landscape of the NFL. And I also think that this is like the trap that I think we all fall into a little bit, is like there's too many first round picks on this defense for it to like be like for it
Yeah.
to not work. So I think talent, just one of the most talented rosters in the NFL, wins out. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
I think there's going to be a pretty big statistical regression from Green Bay's defense because last year it was like eighth in DVOA, but it was because they forced like a crap ton of turnovers.
Right, right.
So they're not going to get that. And I don't even really like the defensive back roster construction. We talked about this a few
We
weeks or
did.
months ago at this point. Um, but I think this offense, which has been top five, is going to unlock something else as well because Jordan Love's just, I mean, he's not actually healthy in this exact moment because of the finger, but which is
It's his
hilarious.
non-throwing hand, so it's
But
okay.
like they were top five in DVOA last year on offense and EPA, and that was with Love missing 2 games and then playing with through a groin injury for several other games. So like I think this is just the easiest call, and I think the Lions and the Vikings both take a slight step back from at least from a wins perspective. So Green Bay here was a quick change for me.
Yeah.
All right, now some fun made up ones. The first overall pick award. Peyton can't see this. He mentioned this team earlier in a positive way, so I'm just gonna throw it out there because the fans, you all might hate this that are watching at this point. The viewers can see it. I have the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's fine. Yeah.
Here's the
I don't
thing.
like them this year, if that's what you're getting. I didn't want to insinuate that I like them.
But here's the thing. I wanted to say Cleveland or New Orleans. You went with New Orleans.
I did.
But then I remember what I dug up last year, and that's the first overall pick hardly ever goes to the team with the lowest win total odds in August. And so I looked at the mid-tier teams instead because it's usually that team that's at 6.5 or 7.5. So last year I actually said the Saints because they were at 7.5. This year I'm going one step up because the 6.5, 7.5 teams I actually like. At 8.5 win over under number is the Miami Dolphins, and I'm all the way out on Miami this year. I think the high flying offensive days are just done. I think Tyreek is just pulling a Jimmy Butler or James Harden and just trying to ruin everything for everybody. I don't believe in the defense whatsoever. Yet again, the offensive line might be even worse than it was last year. Devon Achane is hurt right now. Like there's nothing going on for this team. So if I had to pick one of those teams that's in that mid tier that I just think is ready to have the bottom fall out, it's Miami.
After kind of like scanning the other options, I mean, the other team I flirted with, I just think that the defensive roster is too good. Like I considered the Colts.
I did as well. That was the other
Um,
team I almost went to when I thought about the mid tier thing, but I agree. I think the defense sneakily is like going to end up being a top 10 unit, which sucks because then when Steichen gets fired at the end of the year, if they don't keep Anarumo, then it's going to be like all for naught, and they're just going to
yeah,
start over the defense. So I hope it's one of those things where it's like a first time head coach just keeps the and it's like an OC, and they just keep the defense intact and let the guy stay on. I really hope that's going to be the case. Look at me, I'm doing the Ben and Robertson on odds on favorite firing a coach in August. Um, but yes, that was the tiebreaker. I think that defense is going to be top 10, which is why I did not go with the Colts, which I very much wanted to do.
yeah, because I do think that like people, like I don't want to say people, because I think people who pay attention to like the offseason transactions like we do, realize what's going on the offensive side.
Yeah.
But I think that the general public probably is like, oh, Colts offensive line has been really good for a long time. Like, and it's like the first season where I'm like, I don't know about this offensive line. Like, I'm not really feeling this, and I haven't felt that way about the Colts offensive line in a while. So especially considering the guy that they have in the backfield starting quarterback, I worry tremendously about
Yeah.
that lack of interior offensive line strength. So I but like you said, I just think the defense is too good. And the other team I toyed around with a little bit was like, even though I know that people love what they did this offseason, sneakily the Raiders
Oh, I knew
kind
you were
of
going to say that. Screw
caught my
you, you
eye. And
son of
well, to me, like I know that I'm like going on a diatribe because like the Saints are my pick, but it's just because I like went chalk. It's not really exciting to
I mean,
talk
yeah, they're
about.
real bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but the
As soon,
odds just say they're going to end up with 5 wins instead of 3 or 4, like some random team that we're not thinking about.
yeah, the Saints. Like
I
as
guess
soon as
we're not
they
saying. History
like
says.
not to make this all about the quarterback position. There's other reasons why, but like they wasted the 40. They I don't yeah. Never mind. I will say that they wasted the 40th overall pick on taking a quarterback who's 28 years old and you're not going to name the starter. Like what the hell are we doing?
Yeah,
So
see, I was actually okay with the Shuck pick. I didn't mind it as much as some of our other buddies on box score. The fact that he didn't win the job, though, does, does say a lot
it's
about that.
just like what are we
It's
like?
not great.
Um. So yeah, it's just I think that like Saints Ross where they are strong they are really old. And so I'm betting against like long-term health of those guys, unfortunately, and it's guys that we're excited about. And I have some issues with two groups in particular, the receiving core and the defense backfield. And I defensive backs are like they're fine. I do kind of worry about linebackers aside from of Demario Davis and the safeties. That's really where my concerns are. So I just don't see any plus unit on either side of the ball um, overall. And I guess back to the Raiders. Like the case for the Raiders is I don't think the offensive line is very good, and I think the defense is not going to be very good outside of Max Crosby. So
Um, Last thing with that Saints defense, right? We're used to them being pretty good. We want to say that, like that's probably a floor raiser. Like you said, it's old, but also we haven't seen them without Dennis Allen in a long time. Like
right,
I watched a clip of Cam Jordan on a podcast recently, and he got their defensive line coach fired in the middle of last year because like he just didn't jive with him, basically, which was like super weird. Like this isn't something I would say about a guy like Cam Jordan, like offhand, like as a guess. But he was like, "Yeah, we just had a terrible game plan for like the fourth week in a row, and then I made a call, and then the guy wasn't there on Monday." And we're just like, "How's this good group gonna feel about Brandon freaking Staley? Like, are they
right.
gonna? There's gonna be a mutiny. Like, it's just not gonna." So like this defense, you could just put in the toaster. Yeah, it's all. No, it's done. Um, Then, on a more positive note, our most improved player awards. We do an AFC pick and an NFC pick for each of us. These are the first guys I'm highlighting in the background of these graphics here. A bunch of them, for the most part, are historic names that have won the awards we've given out. This is a fake award. I wanted let me go back to this picture. There's nobody on this first overall pick award. I mentioned this last year. I'm waiting to name it because the Bengals and the Browns still have the most first overall pick selections made in NFL history. Um, and I double checked. The Browns are still the Browns from the 60s and 70s. They were not an expansion team after they were moved to Baltimore.
Huh.
I checked that because Houston was technically an expansion team after they were moved. So they
Right.
would have had it. They have 6, but it's split between Oilers and Texans. For the nerds that really care, since we're at the 2 hour mark, I'll go into that. So as soon as the Bengals or the Browns get another first overall pick, you better bet that this will be named after them. But for now, it's just Bryce Young and Kim or Caleb Williams behind them. But under most improved, I have Quinn Miners for the AFC's inaugural. He won it. We made different picks last year. Never made a Pro Bowl and then was All Pro first team last year. So good on him. And Nick Bond, Jesus Christ. Who's the Eagles linebacker?
Zach Bond.
Zach Bond. I knew it was a stupid name. Anyways, same thing. Rotation player, never even a Pro Bowler, was an All Pro last year. So they're the inaugural winner, so they get to be in the background image. You have Jordan Love, who you talked about. You can talk about that a little more if you want, but Nate Wiggins is your pick for the AFC.
Yeah, I don't necessarily feel like I kind of talked about Jordan Love from the sense of like he just
Great.
has to stay healthy and limit the turnovers and like nothing's stopping him is my opinion. Nate Wiggins, I will kind of like talk a little bit more about. I don't know that people realize how good he was his rookie year. Um,
Yeah.
he led the Ravens in PBUs, which as a rookie for that defense is pretty impressive. 66, goodness, 66.7. There we go. Passer rating when he was targeted, pretty good.
Hmm.
50% completion rate when he's targeted, 31 for 62 on attempts that were thrown his way last year. Also pretty good. The most impressive of all of them was he had negative 28.4 EPA when he was targeted, which led every corner in the NFL as a rookie. Not rookies. He led the
Right.
NFL as a rookie at the corner position,
And the
which
defensive player of the year is at the same position.
correct.
Did not. Yeah.
So I think that to me it's to me coming out in the draft, a lot of people thought he may be a little too like thin
Yep.
to really stand and kind of hang with the big boys as a number one corner. Um, and it very much seems like that does not matter very quickly. Um, I think even considering what else makes up that defensive backfield with the Ravens, for like this kind of thing to take place, typically you do have to have a good environment around you in order for that to happen. And luckily for him, I mean, they draft Malachi Starks, they have Kyle Hamilton,
Hmm.
they bring in Jair Alexander as like a veteran presence corner who's probably gonna like is he gonna start? It's a good
I
question.
don't know. Is he healthy right now? He had a knee
I
thing
don't know if
happening.
he is. So, but still have Marlon Humphrey. So like there's still plenty of like really talented guys in that defensive backfield, but it seems like almost right away he's like the best guy in coverage for that defensive backfield.
Yeah.
Even as a rookie. And becoming the best corner on a defense is already really good, but that's also like Super Bowl caliber
Right.
team good. Um, is a strong case for him to be likely in all pro consideration,
Yep.
even as a second year player, which I know that I did kind of say to, which maybe this is like me, talking out of both sides of my mouth. That corner can sometimes be like an on and off, very hot and cold,
Yep.
roller coaster of a career
Yep.
type of position. But when the rest of the defensive backfield is such a stabilizing force like it is in Baltimore, it does change kind of like that factor a bit, where it's not all relying on you to kind of be the proponent to make the pass defense what it is.
Yeah.
So there's a big reason why, or that is a big reason why Nate Wiggins, I think, has the ability to level up to that all pro caliber consideration. And like, it wouldn't shock me if we're kind of talking about him the same way we would like, where kind of like how we felt about Derek Stingley after a couple of years, where it was like, okay, this guy is very obviously going to be like a top five corner in the league.
Hmm.
I think it's very possible we get that same place with Nate Wiggins after this year.
Yeah. Wiggins very quickly was a lot better than we expected. To your point on like the national consideration, it's going to be like when Charvarius Ward kind of broke out for the Chiefs. And I remember
Yeah,
even to the point of like watching a primetime game and he was hurt. But like every time there was a completion, the cameras just like cut to him and they
right.
talked about him. They're like, and they're without one of the best corners in the league. Their top guy, Travis Ward. And it's like, oh, okay. And that's how these conversations start, where like every time there's a pass thrown and there's a incompletion, or every time he's involved in a play, there's be like, and there's Nate Wiggins, like Nate. And the other thing is like his numbers were so good because Brandon Stevens was the other outside corner, and he was so clearly the guy to target that people just picked on him.
Right.
So then when you're only seeing like three balls a game thrown your way, well, shoot, if you knock two of those down, man, your numbers are going to be awesome. Um, and like Jair Alexander is healthy right now. He's on 53. He's not listed as hurt or
Okay.
anything. But like, he is what he is at this point. So like if we're targeting Jair Alexander again in 2025, then like Nate Wiggins might work out for him again. Um, I think that's a good pick. I like that. My picks. I also went with the quarterback we've already talked about for the AFC. I have Trevor Lawrence. Like I said, I think he's gonna I think we're done with the like he's going to be a top 5 quarterback guy, but I think he's going to firmly get back into top 10 this year under Cohen. And I mentioned all the stats already. My NFC pick, you're going to like this one, is Ernest Jones, linebacker for the
Oh,
Seahawks. Seattle's defense took off last year after acquiring Jones. Per NFL Pro, they allowed the third most yards per carry and most rushing yards over expected in the first 8 weeks of 2024. In the second half of the year, after they acquired Jones, they improved to the ninth fewest yards per carry and the fourth fewest rush yards over expected for the season. So he made up for that plus some. Now with a full spring and summer to get acquainted into the Mike McDonald system, I think Jones could have a breakout year in the middle of this defense in the Roquan Smith mold from 2 years ago. Because remember what Baltimore's defense was the first 8 weeks under McDonald, right? Two years ago. It wasn't that good. There was a lot of miscommunication errors and issues. Then for a year and a half, when they once they were a well-oiled machine, it was an elite defense, right? Now I've said the same thing about Baltimore right now under their current DC, Zach Orr, first 8 weeks last year, and then it's going to take off again. But I think that's going to still apply to Mike McDonald here, where the first half of last season it was rough for Seattle. They completely changed out their linebacker core mid-season, and now Jones, he hopped on a moving train and made an impact. He's a good player. Got the heck out of a bad situation in Tennessee and was like immediately playing impactful football again. And now they've had this whole offseason to once again kind of get reacquainted with the system. I think this is going to be another one of my top three defenses of the year kind of situations. And he's just going to be that guy in the middle that's wreaking havoc and be their green dot, be the leader, be the number one guy. They paid him. So, like, everyone's going to know his name and talk about him in the meetings before any kind of game. So, yeah, Ernest Jones, my pick for the NFC.
I like the pick because and one of the things that they did this offseason was they well, a Byron Murphy hopefully got healthier
Yeah,
in heading into year two, but they also brought in Jaron Reed and Demarcus Lawrence for the defensive line, which obviously it's like not really a threat to earn his position as that green dot linebacker, but whenever you bring in and bolster a defensive line like that, you're just putting you're not asking Ernest to do as much as the stuff that maybe he's not comfortable with and like run support or like
right.
possibly just like putting him in more blitz packages because you have to figure out ways to simulate pressure or bring pressure. Ernest can really settle into a more comfortable role like that when he's at his best, as opposed to having to kind of like make up for the lack of that defensive line depth that Seahawks have kind of been dealing with like for 3 years. It feels like at this point. Um, so I think that's definitely a proponent to like him being in consideration for this award that what, let me ask you, like, do you think that the NFL will ever implement like an award like this?
Yeah,
Considering, okay,
yeah, I think so. There's enough people who do what you and I are doing right now. They could just like log in NFL Pro and see all these stats, and like people care so much about this, and it's this multi-billion-dollar industry. And as we see the discourse of these awards every single year just continue to grow. I mean, they're making new shows all the time. I just got a notification today that Gilbert Arenas and Skip Bayless are starting an NFL show for the arena, and there's like multiple former NFL players that are set to be on it. Like it's going to be like Gil's Arena, but like football, and Skip Bayless is going to be there. I guess in the Rashad McCants role. Uh, like if that's happening, then yeah, like we need a most improved player. We like let's just if all we're gonna do is yell about awards at some point, let's
just
at
make
least
more
get some
awards
more
to
to
yell
talk.
about,
Yeah, let's
right?
just get more of them.
but
Like the
but
NBA
I
just
do
just did their like clutch award and the playoff, MVP trophies and all that stuff a couple years ago. Like the NFL should be, I would assume, be adding some soon.
Yeah. And I mean, like we did get the Protector of the Year award now, which
Yeah, heck yeah.
yeah, which I mean, maybe we can add that to this next year.
Completely over my head. What am I doing? I forget. Is that for one guy? I forget. Is that for one
I think
guy?
it is for one guy, yes. Which
And it's
I
across
mean,
all five positions, like just one offensive lineman.
yes. Which like you would be much more qualified to do
Oh,
that than
I
me.
was about to say
I'm,
off the bat, give me your protected of the year. I will say I'll give you
I'll
a
just
minute.
say Panay Sewell because that's just probably the default favorite. I haven't
That's a
even
good one.
looked at the odds. Like I'm sure there are odds for it, but I'm imagining that Sewell will probably be number one.
It'd be fun. It'd be great if it was Deion Dawkins because he was the most vocal about this. And I do have the Bills as like the sixth best offensive line. He's certainly one of the best tackles in the league. It'll probably go to an Eagle though, right? It'll probably be
Lane
Mailata or Lane
Johnson,
Johnson.
yeah,
Probably one of them for
probably.
the first year would be my guess. I'd go Lane Johnson. I would have said Tristan Wirfs. He was my only A grade that I gave on an offensive line. Um, but coming off the injury, yeah. So I'd go Lane Johnson probably for year one. It makes
Yeah,
sense for him being a veteran and all that of the award.
yeah.
God, man, drop the ball by me. Not that we needed more time to talk about anything because it's been 2 hours and 15 minutes. If you watched this for any amount of time, first off, thank you. If you watch for 2 hours and 15 minutes or listen for 2 hours and 15 minutes, drop a comment, share, like, subscribe, all of that great stuff. We appreciate it. One more time to shout out Box Score Network. Here's everybody. Box Score Network is on YouTube. Here's all of our podcasts. Check them out. Everyone's gearing up for the NFL season. That's Peyton, two peas on a pod. He already shouted it out and told you everything that's going on. So make sure you're there before the season and all through the season to also get you covered on college. Be back here at the Simon and Friends podcast next week as we do our official 1.0 preseason power rankings with Josh Limsayan. Always a fun show. I'm sure that one also won't go over 2 hours. We appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Have fun and be safe out there.